original concept of the Superhero Homies podcast is I wanted a platform where myself and all of my friends could come on and talk about the latest cool movies coming out and the comic books that inspired them and the potential storylines they could use and who these characters are and their feats and their powers and maybe even somewhat pseudo-philosophical questions like, is the Punisher's version of being morally gray, is that really something that's truly ambiguous, or does it really reside on one side or the other? What about people like Galactus or Doom? Like, where do they really reside on the scale of good to bad, and who's really the barometer of that? I wanted to do a podcast to discuss all of those things. At least that's what I say out loud on the microphone and to my friends to make myself seem somewhat humble. Truth be told, I wanted to do this podcast so I could big myself up and be like, look at all the cool, useless shit I know. And today, I do not get that opportunity to do that. This is the Superhero Homies podcast, sure, but this is going to be 100% your episode to shine and to flex and to do all of the above.
Well, I am turned all the fucking way up tonight.
All the way up.
All the way up. Thanks to this Ghost Energy drink, not a sponsor. Actually, the homie Kevin is the one who got me drinking these.
Oh, yeah.
So I'll pour one out for you right here in the studio.
Please don't pour that out.
This nice red energy drink. I'll pour one out into my mouth. Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. To say that I'm excited about this would be a fucking understatement. This is my shit. Not gonna lie. We're talking about Brandon Sanderson's White Sand tonight, and this was a thing where when I knew they were gonna do the omnibus, because I was definitely waiting for that because the old issues were really hard to get a hold of. I was seeing them going for like $200 used.
Yeah.
They had really stopped printing them. This was a whole deal. And I knew the Omni was coming out, and I was like, my mission, like how Rick's mission is ultimately to get the Szechuan sauce, mine is to convert all of my friends into Cosmere nerds. And so this was my opportunity to use your podcast to do it.
Can I just say that, like, all of your mischievous plans have worked, and they've worked way too easily.
Yeah.
Like, hey, dog, I got you this cool omnibus that's on the way, and we should totally talk about it. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
And, hey, man, listen, I got this cool box set of this TV show called The Shield. You should really check this out. I would love to check that out. And then, laying in bed one night and just thinking, like, I got played.
The Shield is a really long gestating thing. Like, as a matter of fact, I would say that is definitely a fucking failure because out of all the people that I've tried to get to watch that, like, I definitely have an overwhelming failure rate. Like,
really,
as far as like how many people that I know and how long I've known them and have they watched it. But also, I will say this, not to turn this into the Shield podcast, because that's another thing I could talk about for 6 fucking days. The Shield is one of those things where, like, if you have any kind of trigger warning, you can't watch that fucking show.
That's true.
I don't care what it is.
Yeah.
If you can't handle animals being harmed, if you can't handle humans being harmed, rape, like anything, like if you have any trigger warning, like
it will be triggered.
That show is probably gonna flip that switch, so that contributes to it as well. Like, there's only certain people that I would really recommend that show to.
That's fair.
Because it is. I mean, they give no fucks.
Oh, no.
It is raw as shit.
Yeah, and you told me this before we started watching it. Was, by the way, you guys can catch our review of the first half of that entire series on Entertainment Evolved. Caleb, the homie Joe, and myself all sat down to discuss the first 4 seasons of that show in its entirety. Excellent stuff. Excellent stuff.
Yeah. And then last night, if you're listening to this, the video is up now too. So you can check out the video under Entertainment Evolved on Spotify or YouTube. You can get the Superhero Homies enhanced audio right here. That was an awesome review, and that was maybe, me and you disagreed on the movie, but we definitely don't disagree on how fun it was to review the shit, because that was a blast.
Yeah.
It may be the most fun I've had reviewing a movie. I don't know, but I think it helps that our opinions were different.
Oh, yeah. Know? And I was thinking about this, too, just earlier today. I think that it's more fun maybe to listen to when you and I in particular disagree.
Yeah.
Simply because, like, when it comes to, like, extreme fine critique, like fine-tuning critique, we're the ones who are really willing to go as deep as we need to go to hit that. And also, like, if you and I both, even if we both shit on something, which is also always fun, it's like there's some poor soul out there listening who's like, man, I really like that, though.
yeah. And we'll shit on it from different angles. Yeah. It's like it's like a super cake party, but shit.
Right.
Oh, well, I guess it's just like a super cake party.
Oh, goddamn.
Yeah. Fuck them.
Yeah.
And if you're offended by that, the only people more soft than you are the wrestlers that you like.
Goddamn, that motherfucking Phil.
One Bill Phil. All right, man. We are all over the place.
We are already.
We got to get into this tonight. But I think you have a challenge for me first.
I do. There is a bit of business that we need to discuss here, and that is the 15 questions game. So
he has a chance to fuck me up tonight because my brain is so Cosmere tuned. I wish you guys could see this. I have so many pages of well-organized notes with me. Mm-hmm. I brought my version of the Omni. I got a fucking star chart over here.
He literally does, yeah.
I brought a bunch of shit tonight. And like this is just an outline. Like it'll be like a couple things that I know will trigger the wiki article in my head. So
that's fucking perfect.
Yeah.
And I would expect nothing less.
Yeah. I'm hyped. But let's get this done.
Let's go ahead and do this then.
Let's get this bread.
All right. It's on you, my friend.
All right. So are you before we even get started, is this
I will go ahead and tell you, I would not Brendan you. He did waste his first question last time asking, is this a comic book question? And I was like, yes, Brendan, it is.
Okay, yeah. I just wanted to make sure. And then, like, not only that, but, like, I asked, is it Marvel? You said yes, and then later that motherfucker said, is it DC?
That's on him.
Yeah, I know. I was like, really? Okay. All right, so it is a comics character. Is it a Marvel character?
Yes.
Okay. That's always a 50-50.
Yep.
But you got to burn another question if you get a no there.
I know.
Because it could be a fucking Dark Horse character.
It could be Dark Horse or Image.
Anything.
Yeah.
Dynamite.
Right. Oh, shit. Like, technically, like, I could really just
swear
fuck
to
you
God,
up.
Man. I don't mean to derail this in the middle of the game, but I listened to 17th Shard, which is a Cosmere mainly podcast, and they do a Who's That Cosmere Character game, and it's like it's 5 clues, and then everybody on the podcast gets one guess after each clue, and if they don't get it by the end, then they lost. But
that's pretty cool.
So yeah, but anyway, all right, that's one. I get 3 guesses?
Yep.
This is solo? All right, that doesn't count as a question. No. That's a rules clarification. All right, maybe I should stop drinking this energy drink. Is it a male?
No.
Okay. Are they a villain?
No.
That's 3?
Yep.
Would you consider them a hero?
Yes.
Are they associated with the X-Men?
No.
Are they associated with the Avengers?
No.
Have they been in a live-action film?
No.
Have they been in a live-action television show?
Yes.
Do you like the show? You know that's always going to be the next fucking question.
It's a branching path right here. Yeah. Yes, I do enjoy the show.
That's not what I fucking asked you. I said, do you like it?
Oh, yes.
Okay. 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 That's 9. Have I seen the show?
I will say, yeah.
Is it part of the MCU?
No.
Okay. I only got 4 questions left. I got to tighten up here. So, they've been in a live action television show. Mm-hmm. It's a female hero. They are not associated with the X-Men, so that rules out Gifted.
Yep.
And the fucking show with what's his name on it, Xavier's kid.
Oh yeah, Legion.
Legion, thanks. And it's not part of the MCU. It's Marvel, so it's not CW drivel. Fucking A. And you're not an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. person. Live action television show. Marvel. Not in the MCU. Oh no. Is this an Inhumans character?
That's a question?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Was that 11? I got 4 left? Or was that 10 and I got 5 left? I think
that
was 10.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. The fuck? All right, hold on. All right, so not part of the MCU, not Inhumans, live action television show. And you think I've seen it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're like clarification. You're like positive I've seen the show.
Yes.
Okay. Marvel character. I feel like I'm getting hoodooed here. This is where I start looking at the shelves. It's not going to help me. Shit.
Yep.
Okay. Marvel television show that's not in the MCU, not The Gifted, not Legion. I haven't fucking seen Runaways. But you've seen some of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I'll have to burn one. Are they in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.?
No.
Fuck! Okay. That's 11. What fucking... I mean, this is not a question. You know? What fucking Marvel television show exists that's outside of the parameters that I have outlined? I know that I'm going to be like, what the fuck, in a minute. Marvel. Not in the MCU. And I've seen it.
Yes, yep, you have definitely seen it. I would do you a favor. Okay. I would give you a slight hint. You have also seen this character in a show that wasn't just her.
And has tie-ins to other shows. Mm-hmm. Okay. My brain is drawing a fucking blank on this. This is what happens when I spend the entire day steeped in the Cosmere.
Yes, I was going to say, I got you on the Cosmere shit.
You did. I'm just like, fuck. Okay.
And I believe you have 3...
I have 3 questions left.
Yep.
And I'm over here just desperately trying to put this shit together. I feel like it's going to be obvious when it happens, but like my brain is just like, what the fuck are you thinking here?
Now, I will extend to you the same grace that I extended to Brendan. I can give you what I think is a heavy clue, but it will cost you 2 guesses.
And then I'll only have the 1 guess.
Yep.
Okay, I'll make that trade.
Okay. This character is on the bookshelf behind you.
Motherfucker. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Man, yeah, when you either guess this or don't, yeah, it's gonna be, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, oh, of course. It's why did I think of that? It's the Marvel Netflix stuff. So I got 3 questions left?
Yep, 3.
Okay. Are they in Luke Cage?
Actually, no.
Okay. Are they the titular character in their show?
Yes.
Jessica Jones.
It is Jessica Jones. That's correct. Man,
I don't know why the Netflix verse.
Yeah, I was so surprised. I was like, yeah, the Netflix shit just kind of.
The Netflix shit just fucking broke me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wasn't even thinking about any of that shit because I haven't watched a lot of it in a while.
Yeah, it has been a while.
Probably because the last time I actually did a full watch through of like all of that shit.
All of it? I thought it was just Daredevil.
Maybe no. No. You know what? I just watched Daredevil, but I watched Defenders, like where it goes.
Oh yeah,
and that shit'll make you not want to watch any of it.
Yeah. And cause so I was like, I wasn't sure how much Jessica Jones you had seen, but I distinctly remember you mentioning sometime somewhat recently rewatching Defenders.
Yeah, and I actually like seasons 1 and 3 of Jessica Jones.
Yeah.
I think 2 I was not.
2 was the one with her mother, I think. It's like a monster, and then the monster is actually her mother.
Yeah, something like that, I think. Yeah. That might have been 3, actually.
Was that 3? It could have been. No, 3 was the one with Nuke.
Okay. Yeah.
That was a good season.
Yeah, I liked 3. Yeah. I did not. I didn't hate 2, but it was just okay.
Yeah, and of course 1 was the best season of that show.
Yeah. So.
It's interesting though because I had Brendan on, and I think it was for the Steel review, that classic movie,
right?
And I had the same character in mind for him, and he did not get it. So I was like, I wonder. It would have been admittedly sweet for me
if you got us both.
Yeah.
Well, if my brain had like made that wrinkle to go to the fucking Netflix verse early, I think I would have got that shit way sooner. But yeah, for whatever reason, that whole block when you said live action Marvel not in the MCU, my brain should immediately went to there.
Yeah.
Not Inhumans.
Right.
I was like, oh God. But yeah, I don't know why I didn't fucking think of any of that. But
first of all, I wouldn't assume that you had watched any Inhumans in the first place.
No. I saw the trailer. That was enough. Yeah, I was good.
That Ike Poromoto goodness.
Yeah, it's like Star Wars. You show me the credits first before I watch it. I need to know how far up in the credits Kathleen Kennedy's name is.
That is, and this is something that you told me, I guess a few weeks ago, maybe even longer actually. But it was still a surprise to me sitting down rewatching the old indie flicks and seeing her name pop up in the credits. Like, oh no.
Yeah. Coffee getter. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, with that being said, homies, one and all, welcome back to a very special and very unique episode of the Superhero Homies podcast. My name is Quentin, and tonight I am here with my good friend, the homie Caleb.
Hey, and as we said earlier, I am all the way up.
All the way. I need a button for that now.
All the way up. Definitely need a button for that.
Yes,
shit. Yeah, man. I'm so hyped for this, dude. Like, I've been really wanting to have a reason to nerd out about this shit. I actually recorded a episode with Kay for my podcast a little while ago where we actually ranked everything that we had both read in the Cosmere. But I actually, because we had both read a good bit of White Sand, we went ahead and ranked it based on what we had read so far. And I think we ranked it accurately. I think so. We did like a S, A, B, C scale.
Yeah.
And I think we put it in the B or A column. I think we might have put it in the B column. But I think we ranked it accurately, even though... And I think I put it there knowing that the last act of any Sanderson work is going to blow your fucking socks off.
So this is going to be interesting because we haven't spoken since we both finished it.
We have not.
And now that you finished it, would you keep it where it is with your ranking, or would you retrospectively move it up, or what? What's the deal?
I would definitely keep it where it's at, like, but you have to understand that, like, even the stuff, even if we put it in the B column, which I'm pretty sure that's where we put it, I still, like, the stuff that's in the A and the S column is like so fucking good.
Gotcha.
So, like, even for this, even the stuff at the bottom I love.
Yeah.
You know, even the stuff that we gave a C. And that was only 2 things.
Yeah.
I love those things. So, you know, this is, even though I don't consider it to be like prime time fucking Cosmere, I still thought that it was incredible. Yeah. As a matter of fact, usually I would say for most people, I always suggest that they start with Mistborn if they're going to get into the Cosmere dive. And Mistborn is a 600-page novel. And that is intimidating to a lot of people. And I would say there's a couple of other entry points. Some people have started with Way of Kings. That's an 1,100-page novel.
Wow.
I typically don't recommend that unless the person that I'm talking to is like an avid reader.
Yeah.
And even then, I usually will tell them to start with Mistborn because it's an action-adventure book. Way of Kings is like the first 700 pages is world building.
Oh, gotcha.
And if you just fucking have a hard dick for world building, then that is a fucking buffet that it will never end for you. It's just it is the fucking the chocolate fondue fountain, and you're the fucking 8-year-old kid trying to put his corn on the cob in the shit.
So that's almost 2/3 of the book, then. Roughly what you say?
Well, and the thing about that is once you get through that chunk of like where it's all world building, they just fucking go. And like the next book is longer, and it literally picks up right at the end of the first book, and they don't have to do all that build up,
right?
And they just run, and it's that's my favorite book of all time. So
which one's that one?
The second one. It's called Words of Radiance.
Oh, okay.
It's the sequel to Way of Kings. Yeah,
gotcha. And that's your favorite?
That's my favorite book. Period. Yeah. So that being said, I would actually recommend, depending on who it is, I think this is a new Cosmere entry point for me. I think that, especially if someone is more inclined to graphic novels, it's the only graphic novel in the Cosmere.
You're referring to White Sand now.
Yeah, White Sand now. I think if someone is more inclined to like a graphic novel and I want to introduce them to the way Sanderson writes, I think that this is a decent entry point. Because this book, even though I know everything, just about everything there is to know publicly about this universe, I still wanted to know more.
Same.
Right? Yeah. At the end of this book, you're like, well, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Well, we got other shit to do. Where you read this?
Yeah, the shit ain't done. We ain't over.
Yeah.
Which I guess, by the way, guys, like this won't be like a super... We're not going to like break down every single detail of every single panel, but there will be spoilers in this.
Yeah, so what I'm going to do, if somebody's a Cosmere person, I'll put this out there. I am going to briefly explain what the Cosmere is to start us off, but I am going to... There will be the minorest, tiniest of spoilers in there. Nothing relevant. And then I will keep all the spoilers contained to White Sand after that. So if you would like, at the end of the podcast, we can do like a 5-10 minute section that is just spoilers. We can just go balls to the wall?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, we'll have to tell several people to cut this shit off.
Yeah. Oh, we will. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Cosmere, and this is a great one of the great reasons that we're on this podcast. The Cosmere is essentially very much like the MCU. And one of the things about the popularity of the MCU is when Brandon first started doing these interconnected works, this was in like the 90s. And so there really wasn't this, cultural zeitgeist where everybody's like, we want everything to be connected. As a matter of fact, the only thing that was kind of in the mainstream that was like that was probably like Stephen King's works, which have those really,
they're super, but those connections are, they're more like, to a degree,
they're Easter eggs.
Yeah, they're glorified Easter eggs. Yeah,
yeah. They're like, you have to watch this shit over and over again to understand it. This is like I was watching. This is a weird ass reference, but I was watching Suits the other day, and in like the second episode, they work with this lady who has a doll company, and she makes one of the characters like a weird creepy doll of themselves, and like. In like episode 9 or whatever, we were watching it, and you see the doll in the background. It's that kind of shit.
Yeah.
Know? And these connections are not. These are important, and they matter. And so, a massive like interconnected universe was not a thing in the mainstream. But now the interest in that is incredibly high.
People are you know how it is, like when things go too hard in a certain direction, and then it becomes a forced trope almost.
Right.
It's like, in terms of like the mainstream, the MCU did it, and they did it to tremendous success. And then all of a sudden, everybody, for people who it makes sense, like DC, and for people who it doesn't make sense, like the Universal Monsters, everybody has tried to kind of have that kind of interconnected universe.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that, right? It's because the interconnected universe works on so many levels. For example, with the MCU, if you didn't start off with Iron Man, I mean, technically that's okay if you want to watch Captain America first even. That's fine. And the reason why that's so cool, especially for somebody like Brandon Sanderson, like a novelist, is because you put out a book, and then you put out another book, and if somebody were to technically read that second book first, would they be lost?
Well, so it depends, right? Mm-hmm. It's kind of like a series of silos. So obviously with Mistborn, you want to start with the first Mistborn book.
Right.
Which there are 8 now. So, you want to start with Mistborn.
Mm-hmm.
But if you started with Way of Kings, which is a Stormlight book, then you would not think anything of it. Just like this book is very standalone.
It is.
There's not all these crazy connections. The crazy connections come where I know what these characters are going to do, because one of the main characters of this book is like everywhere, right? And there is a huge Easter egg in this book, and I assure you that you didn't catch it.
Because, I know I didn't.
Yeah,
but I knew you would.
Yeah. Of course I caught it immediately. So, the Cosmere is a series of interconnected works. It's about, I don't know, at this point it's like 8 or 9 different planetary systems. And it's pretty much one book, like one book series will be like on one planet.
Gotcha.
So you have Scadrial, which is where all of Mistborn takes place there. You have Roshar, which is another planet. And Scadrial, one of the reasons that Mistborn is so popular too, I think, Scadrial is Earth does not exist in the Cosmere.
Right.
Scadrial is a close planet to Earth. If you've only read the first Mistborn book, you'd probably be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Because there's literally like volcanoes that spew ash into the air 24/7. But it is the Earth analog there. It is the most like Earth. Whereas, as a matter of fact, there's Brandon recently put out a little cool YouTube video about his inspirations for Mistborn. It's maybe like 10 minutes long. And they kind of explain like what his mindset was going through all that stuff. Roshar is where the Stormlight Archive takes place, and this planet is fucking weird. Like, it doesn't have soil. There's one little section of the planet that has soil. For the rest of it, it's basically like the bottom of the ocean, but with no water. Like, it's kind of how it is. It's kind of a mind fuck to wrap your brain around it, right?
A little bit.
A planet with no soil. That's just a foreign concept to us. And then you have, let's see, what you have Lumar, which is where the most recent Cosmere entry, and that will not be the case in 90 minutes because another Cosmere book is going to be coming out in 90 minutes tonight. It is called Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, which sounds like a Studio Ghibli film. I have no fucking idea what it's going to be about or where it takes place. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So I know that at this point, Mr. Sanderson has amassed an enormous fan base, and to a degree, I think it's fair to say, like, to a degree, he's almost like the Christopher Nolan of fantasy,
right?
Because now Nolan puts out a movie. Who cares what it's about? Nolan made it. You know what his stuff is like, and if you like his other stuff, you're probably gonna like this.
Well, these 4 books the 4 brand new books he's releasing this year, and he's really actually releasing 5, but the secret ones, the surprise 4 books that he just wrote and didn't tell anyone, those set the Kickstarter record, the all-time Kickstarter record. And it literally was, here is zero information about these books. It was literally just, Brandon Sanderson wrote 4 books. Do you fucking want them or not? And it set the Kickstarter record for all time.
That's insane.
And that, to me, is insane.
Yeah.
But you love to see it.
Oh, yeah.
So we have Cell, which is where Elantris takes place, which is his earliest published work, and there's also a novella called The Emperor's Soul that takes place there. But this book in particular that we're going to be doing tonight is on a very unique planet, even amongst the Cosmere, called Taldane, and we're going to get further into that in a minute. So
I had a couple of questions, and some of which you've answered already. But one of my comments I wanted to make was that this, I thought, was a very unique book and a very excellent choice to adapt into a graphic novel.
Yeah.
Because one, this book can be published into like one very attractive, very well put together omnibus. Whereas I feel like, I don't know his work, a tenth as well as you do, but I imagine that anything else that could potentially even be considered a starting point for it to be adapted into a graphic novel format, we're talking about a shelf of books,
Yeah. Just the first Mistborn, yeah. You're looking at maybe 3 of these, of the Omnis.
I imagine easily, yeah. Yeah.
And another thing, too, is the reason I think that this made such a great graphic novel, and we may be jumping around here, so I apologize for that, is like, how many ways are you going to describe he shot out a beam of sand? You know what I mean?
That's true. Yeah.
That's going to get old eventually.
Yeah.
Most of the other magic systems, you can do a bunch of different stuff. But with this, seeing visually what the characters are able to do with their abilities, I think, lends itself to the story significantly. And there's one scene in particular that stuck out to me, and I think probably stuck out to you too. And we'll definitely have to talk about that.
Yes.
So I want to touch on some things about the Cosmere that I think might clarify some of the questions that you have about that maybe aren't answered in the book. So the overarching narrative of the Cosmere is, like, thousands and thousands of years ago, there was one god, uppercase God, uppercase G, and that god's name was Adonalsium. And for whatever reason, we don't actually know why yet, a group of people came together and decided to kill God. And so when they killed God, I don't know 100% if they knew this was going to be the outcome or not. That's not really clear. He was broken up into 16 sections, which we call shards in the Cosmere.
Gotcha.
And each one of those shards embodies an aspect of God, right? So to give you an example of them, some of the shards, there's honor, there's ruin, there's preservation, there's odium, which, if you're not familiar with that term, Odium is essentially malice or
okay.
vengeance or wrath. And I think there's a very direct reason why he chose that name for the shard. There's cultivation. There's whimsy. There is autonomy, which is the one we're going to talk a lot about tonight. So, something I want to ask you, especially in the third act of the book, but it's all throughout the book, you will occasionally see like a face in the clouds. Did you ever notice that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, that is Bavadin. And Bavadin is the holder of the autonomy shard.
Interesting.
And she is essentially the lowercase g god of Taldane, which is where all of this takes place.
Okay, because the first time that I saw the cloud in the face, the face in the cloud, I should say, I didn't really know what to make of it, but I thought maybe it was, a unique wink and a nod, basically. But then you see it again, and then I believe you see it at least one more time. I didn't keep track of how many times, but I noticed every time because I like to study the panels in books like this, especially when the artwork is this gorgeous. But I didn't know what that was supposed to represent. So that makes a lot more sense than what you say.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of these 16 shards, they are essentially gods, right? Like, they do not have anywhere near the power that the original god had.
Yeah.
But their power is still basically infinite. It is immense. They are bound by certain things. They all have certain covenants or agreements with each other that they are bound by and cannot break. And breaking them would open them to be attacked by the others. And you got to keep in mind as well, all of this happened thousands of years ago. So all of them have been what they are for a very, very long time.
Right.
Now, here's another interesting thing. Among those 16 people, there was actually more than 16 people there. There were at least 18. And one of the people there that did not take a shard, had the option but did not take one, their name is Hoyd. They also, they have a couple of different aliases in the Cosmere, and they are in every single book. They are known as Hoyd in some cases. They are known as Wit in some cases, and they're also known as Sephandrius in some cases. So there's a little hint for you. Yeah. So I have a D&D character that is based off of this person, and they are in this book actually in two places.
Really.
That is so the place that it would be the most obvious is at the very end when they are on the boat and the guy starts singing the song. That's him. That is Hoyd.
Oh.
Yeah. He is like an ancient world traveled. He's been to every planet we've talked about.
Huh.
And he basically has access, maybe not at this moment in time, but later he has access to basically every magic system from every world. So he is incredibly powerful. He does not hold a shard, but you would not want to fuck with him.
Gotcha. So even though he doesn't have a shard, he's still not to be fucked with.
Yeah, I mean, he's still functionally immortal. He's probably the most powerful allomancer that exists, which means he can use metals to do all sorts of crazy things. He also has a mastery of sand, and he can do sand mastery, and he can do all kinds of shit. He basically has a little bit of each magic system throughout the different worlds. Now, you might be asking, if you have read this book or any of the books I've referenced, if all of these stories are on different planets, then how the fuck are there crossovers between them if there's not spaceships? And there is not in 95% of what's out there.
If a spaceship suddenly appeared in white sand, I would be like, what the fuck just happened here?
Yeah, I don't think anybody has a spaceship yet at the time that this takes place anywhere. Mm-hmm. But that being said, so there's another aspect to the Cosmere called realmatic theory, and there, this book, all of it takes place in the physical realm, but there is a secondary realm called the cognitive realm, and in that realm, there are space is not represented by physical distance; it is represented by souls. And so, how large or small something is directly related to how sentient it is and how many sentient creatures are there. So, for example, a ocean would be very small, other than like the creatures that live there. Like if there's a giant whale or something, that's different. But a city would be massive. Right?
Gotcha.
And then the space between planets where there is no life would be not that large.
Okay.
And so, in order to travel to a different world, you have to use what's called a perpendicularity, which is basically a if you watch the Indiana Jones review, it's a space-time butthole. But no, it's essentially a portal into the other realm. And you basically would swap over to that realm and then travel to another planet and go back. And so that is how there is travel between the worlds. And Chrysala, which is one of the main characters in this book, and we'll get to her for sure in a minute.
Oh, yes.
She is incredibly well traveled. As a matter of fact, she is probably the most knowledgeable magical scholar in the entire Cosmere. She knows even more than Hoyd. And Hoyd has been around for thousands of years.
Yeah. And
has been involved in all this shit from day one. So, it's a really cool thing with her. I think that's probably all of the like basic Cosmere knowledge that's needed. I want to talk about Taldane specifically for a minute because there's some really specific shit here. So, all of those shards, their power is called investiture.
Okay.
And that can manifest itself in all kinds of different ways. And we see two kind of ways that it exists here. So I told you that autonomy is the shard that rules over the Taldane system.
Yeah. And
much like the name of her shard, of Bavadin is the person's name that holds the shard. She has made Taldane very closed off. It is nearly impossible to escape the planet, and it is basically impossible to return if you do manage to leave. That face in the clouds is her. Early on in the Cosmere, we kind of all thought that like Odium is the main like bad guy of the whole overarching story, but kind of as it's gone on, it's like it's also autonomy. Like she's a bitch.
Huh.
And what she likes to do, what she tends to do, is she likes to create an avatar of herself. And she will take that avatar, which is like just a small fraction of her power, and she will send it to a far-off world and create a religion there around whatever that is.
Yeah.
And so her kind of outlook is to create like this religion that's really based around autonomy, and over thousands of years, because time is irrelevant to her.
Right.
It will build up a bunch of followers, and then she will invade the planet and take it over.
Gotcha.
And so that's kind of that's her deal.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is for anybody who's read any of Mistborn, there is a religion on Scadrial called Trellism, and the random like foreman that gets saved, that Kenton saves in this book. His name is Trell. And that's like one of the weirdest fucking things, I think, for most of like the Cosmere folks like myself, is we're like, did she just like the name of this guy? Is he somehow related to this religion on this different planet? But that is one of her avatars. And yeah, like she basically like spent thousands of years like building up this fake religion. Well, I mean, she's a deity, so I guess
Yeah,
it's not fake.
yeah.
You know, to kind of like try to invade that world. And I can't say much more about that without spoiling shit. But yeah, she's kind of awful. So
Okay.
yeah, I would say that she is, in my mind, right up there with Odium in as far as like being a danger to the entire Cosmere.
So let me ask you this, and we can bypass it if this gets too spoilery.
Okay.
But there's like passages or like cliff notes between each chapter of the book, and they kind of fill in the blanks. It's for me, it's very Alan Moore-ish. That's something that he loves to do, is to tell you the story between the story, and it's very unique because most of it, if not all of it, is written from the POV of Chrysala.
Yeah.
And there is a section where they're talking about the kind of the origin of the different lifestyles and or religion on the planet. Does that to you square with the actual deity? And so basically, do you think what was your name again? Like the cloud lady, lower G god?
Bavadin. She holds
Yeah.
autonomy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bavadin who holds autonomy. Do you think that she so did she essentially instill this religion onto this planet?
I would wager that any religion on Taldane is based on one of her avatars. For sure.
Gotcha.
Right down to like the Sand Lord.
Yeah.
There's no way that's not an avatar of hers. Yeah, there's just no way, because going further into Taldane, it is. So the interesting thing about this planet is there's a light side and a dark side of the planet, and it does not rotate, which is a weird ass thing for us to conceptualize. So it is daytime on half the planet 100% of the time, and it is nighttime on half the planet 100% of the time. And the planet is caught between two stars. There's a very large star called Aesda on the light side, and there is a smaller star called Ritos on the dark side. And both of those provide the planet with light, but they also provide the planet with autonomy's investiture. So I guess we can get into that. On the dark side, so there's two magic systems, right? There's one on the dark side, one on the light side. Autonomy fuels both of them. Like her power, her investiture fuels both of them. But on the dark side of the planet, they have star marks. Chrysala mentions those,
Right.
that they fade, but these are like tattoos that give you powers. And those are like charged basically by that smaller star on the dark side.
Oh, okay.
So if you think about it, it's like they're constantly, like, they're using their powers, but their powers are constantly being refueled by that star.
Yeah.
We don't actually know what Chrysala's ability is. I believe that it's a functional immortality, because she is alive way after this.
Interesting.
Way after this.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, I don't know if she has notes in Tress. I don't remember that, but I know that at least like probably 1,000 years, at least like 500 or 600 years after all of this, she is still out and about.
Yeah.
So I think an unnatural lifespan is part of her abilities, because we never see her necessarily do anything. Her powers don't work on Dayside.
Yeah.
But the thing is, as long as she can get investiture, like as I said, if you, at the end of the day, it's all investiture. It's all power. It's just a matter of, it's like, like AC versus DC, If you can distill or convert or whatever to get it to what you're trying to use, then you can use it.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the dark side power. the magic system that we talk about a lot in this book is the sand mastery, and that is the same concept. The sand, and Chrysala kind of does these experiments throughout the book.
Yep.
We see that the sand is like a solid white, and then there are creatures that eat it.
Yeah.
And like poop it out, and it's
black.
It's black. Or when the sand masters get done using it, and they're no longer wielding it, it turns that same color, and then it sits out in the sun and becomes white over time.
Recharges, yeah.
And that's what's happening is, as we learn, there are like microorganisms on the sand. And those microorganisms are basically, they are absorbing the investiture from the star on the light side of the planet. So autonomy is kind of the same concept. Is constantly that star beams her investiture down onto the light side of the planet.
Okay.
And so that's what recharges the sand.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Jesus.
And there are magic systems like this on every world, basically, that has especially the ones where a shard has taken up residence. So,
man, that is deep as fuck.
Yeah.
That is so expansive.
Yeah. Yeah. It goes, like, the rabbit hole goes deep for this. And it was really fun for me because I haven't visited Taldane before I read this book. And
has it been mentioned in any of your other readings?
Autonomy is heavily mentioned.
Okay.
And I know that this is where she sets up shop. And, of course, Chrysala is all over the place. And I actually got to give a shout-out to the homie Oz, because he was reading...
You don't have to.
I do. Because this is actually something that even I didn't fucking catch. He's reading one of the, like, way later Mistborn books, and he's like, yeah, somebody was, like, dancing with this character at a ball or something, and I was like, really? And he was like, yeah, they seemed like really out of place or whatever, and I was just like, were they asking them about how their powers worked? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, fucking A. And yeah, in fact, it is Chrysala. and I was like, damn it, man. So that was just a crazy thing where, like, I missed that in my read through, and he caught it.
And he caught it.
Yeah, she gets around as far as worlds go.
And she seems the type, man. Like, she is so inquisitive.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's definitely like the word. She's super inquisitive, and like, I mean, I'll go ahead and say it. I think she's probably my favorite character in the book.
Yeah.
I think she's great.
I mean, two things, right? Like, there's a lot of really cool scholars in the Cosmere. My favorite character is probably is definitely considered a scholar. My favorite Cosmere character. But from a pure, like, do you need a scholar standpoint, I would go with her over anybody.
Wow.
100% of the time. She's just fucking cool. And the drip is...
the drip, immaculate.
At all times.
Yeah, even in like the worst of times, like, this is not the time for your drip to make an appearance. It's still here.
Yeah. The drip of Chrysala, if you see the cover of this book, that's like the worst you see her look ever.
Yeah.
And she looks awesome on the cover. You want to know more about this character. But yeah, I mean, the drip is on point all the time. So let's talk about this book and how, like, it kind of came about, and then we'll get into the details. We started zoomed way out here. Yeah. And I'm constantly zooming us in. So White Sand as a story was originally released in 3 volumes. First volume came out in 2016, and then 2018, 2019. And then it was... So this was kind of their experimentation with doing a graphic novel in the Cosmere. And a lot of it just didn't pan out the way you would want. Some of the magic stuff was different. Some of the artists, especially in volume 3, were not like... they weren't really in tune with the story and the universe. And, like, the infamous scene where there's a fucking boombox.
I remember you telling me about that, and that is so hilarious now. After having read the book, I'm like, what?
How could there have been a fucking boombox? There literally, at this point in time, could not be a boombox fucking anywhere.
Was it with the spaceship? No.
No, it is nowhere. And so I think around 2020, 2021, they said we're going to do an omnibus for this soon. And the omnibus released in 2022. LO fucking L. No, it didn't.
Well, when did you first bring this information to me? Like when did we first discuss?
It's been like 8 months.
Yeah.
It was before I moved back here.
Yeah.
Yeah. It took fucking, like, the production of this thing from Dynamite. And I will go ahead and say this now. I will never do any fucking business with them ever again. Dynamite dropped the fucking ball on this. And the entire fandom is just like, fuck these guys.
It was a bad move for Dynamite.
And I honestly don't know if they will do more graphic novels in the Cosmere. If they do, I don't think they'll go through Dynamite.
Probably not.
Because it's just been awful. I mean,
like I think the reception of this book and the sales of this book are probably most definitely well enough to warrant more. But I don't think that they will be using Dynamite, if I had to guess. And who knows? Like I don't know if this is like a one-time isolated thing that happened with Dynamite. I mean, they recently, put out the Boys in omnibus format, and the Boys is maybe like their biggest IP that they publish. And I'm like, man, they got those out on time and with like no severe misprints or anything. So I'm like, if they could do that with something like The Boys, then I'm like, surely they can. Maybe they just fucked up. They had like one colossal fuck up,
It was a series of colossal
fuck ups. It was though, like, cause it was a whole venture, you trying to get these books.
I mean, we thought that your copy might be the only one.
Oh yeah.
For a long time. And then for me to get this fucking thing, the deluxe one, and then they fucked up a lot of these, and they just had to send new ones out, and they were like asking people to send their fucked up ones back in to get a new one, and I'm like, fuck that, I don't know if I'll ever get one back.
Right.
The only fuck up they did that was good was they sent me 2 paperbacks. I only ordered 1, and they sent me 2.
I remember you telling me that, yeah.
So I'm like, this is not worth, this fucking trade paperback is not worth all my troubles. But I will fucking take it.
Oh, yeah.
Even then, I got a free thing, and I was still rolling my eyes like, you fuck ups.
Yeah.
Like, how many ones are y'all going to roll here?
Like, they were trying to test, like, Hollywood movies with how many setbacks the release date had.
Right, yeah. I mean,
it was crazy.
It's like a Black Adam number of fucking setbacks.
Yeah. Because I remember thinking that, okay, for sure this time we're going to get it. And this was in October,
Yeah. But I will say this. The team at Dragonsteel, which is Sanderson's company, the head of creative over there, Isaac Stewart, this was his baby. And he really, I think, just knocked it out of the park. All of the notes from Kasala, those were all written and added by him.
Wow.
So none of that was in the original. So all of those pages that have her notes, which I, as a lore slut, just fucking ate those up.
Yeah.
Every time I got to one of those, I was like, oh, here we go. And I just started digging into it,
Yeah.
And, I mean, they were basically like little wiki articles almost.
That's exactly what they are. But see, like, it makes so much sense it's so well done because it's from the POV of the character who was in the story.
Yeah, and it's who she is.
Yeah, yeah. And so it all checks out,
Yeah.
And I really dug that too.
And a lot of the lore, they aligned a lot of the lore with the Cosmere. The omnibus is the only canon version. So
this is considered canon, but when it first came out in trade paperback format.
So the original, I think they were actually floppy comics.
Oh wow, yeah, okay.
If I'm not mistaken.
Gotcha.
Those were canon at the time, even though like there were some like glaring like fucking issues.
Right.
As a matter of fact, in the original works, Ace, who's one of the not your kind of Ace, who's one of the
AIS,
main characters. It was a male. They gender swapped her for this, and I think it works out actually in this case.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
And then,
I can kind of see it, but
yeah.
Huh. Okay.
And to me, I feel like that just it's got to work better this way.
I think so. Yeah.
And all the Chrysala notes. Also, originally the Sandmasters had this weird fucking shit where they could turn sand into water.
What?
And that was completely omitted from like the canon because
that's damn near OP. If you
made
think
no
about
fucking
it.
sense. Yeah. I don't know what the deal was with that. So that this was their like, we're gonna align this with the Cosmere.
Yeah.
And you're looking around the room here. You're somebody who collects a lot of omnis. Like, what did you think about like just the overall, like the way that this is put together, the presentation?
Yeah, I was gonna say the presentation of this book is pretty damn immaculate. Like, there's a lot of care and attention put into this. Like, for example, the book, although it doesn't have an eye, it really doesn't need one because it's compact enough so that the book stays down flat, almost no matter what page you have the book on. And so you don't have to hold it open for like the first few pages, and then the book kind of lays flat. I love the fact that there's very little gutter loss, if any, on the pages.
Yeah.
And so like the bordering on the artwork is pretty fucking expansive, and so you get a lot of art on your pages here. I like the fact that the binding in this book is also really well, which means there's no gutter loss. That shit that's in like that shit that's normally missing, like that middle section right there. So yeah, no gutter loss. In other words, this is a really well put together book.
Some of the panels are breathtaking.
Yeah, and that's not even to speak of the artwork here. Like, the artwork is immaculate. And what I really like, because like you said, I do read a lot of omnis. The thing about most omnis is that you're going through different teams of people sometimes.
Right.
So you'll get a different colorist or a different artist or a different inker, and it kind of throws you off from one story to the next. Whereas with this almost entirely seems to have like the same consistent art style, and there are a few issues once you get towards the end, like you can tell that there's an art difference here from here.
Well, and those are probably those panels are probably new, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and that would make sense.
Yeah.
But it's like it only really happens like once, So like for the most part, the artwork is incredibly consistent, and then even when they do change the artist, is at a point in the story where it's noticeable, but it's very insignificant.
Well, and also too, it's never like you can't recognize that character.
That is the worst.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we're at the point here where we can kind of get into some of those characters and then maybe talk about some of the major plot lines. So the first character we're introduced to here really is Kenton, right? Like,
so I mean, we do technically start off with
Chrysala, which I think is the right play, but I don't think we find out a lot about her.
We don't. We just know that she's traveling to this new land,
right? Kenton and that's another addition too. Is that prologue is new.
Oh,
so
okay.
You kind of get the idea that Kenton's going to be the main character, and I think he probably is the main protagonist. But I would put Chrysala right there with him.
Yeah.
So Kenton is the youngest son of the Lord Mastral, and we come to find out that a Mastral or the Lord Mastral is the head of what they call the Diem. And this is based off of the Latin word for day, because they are the masters of the magic on the day side of the planet. So the Diem is the Order of Sandmasters. He's the youngest son of the Lord of the Sandmasters, and he's not very good at what he's not considered very powerful.
Right.
And at first notice, you would kind of think, okay, well that is a little tropey, right? I've seen it before. But I think that Kenton is there's a lot of depth added to Kenton in every chapter.
Yeah.
And I think he overcomes that probably by like midway of the book.
Yeah, I think so too. I think for me, really once the mantle starts to weigh heavy on him, and he doesn't have to, but he begins toying with the idea of maybe doing things that would otherwise be beneath him.
Right.
You know, I think for me, that's really when his character started to open up for me.
Yeah.
Because a lot, especially in the beginning, a lot of what Kenton has here is very, old world underdog protagonist,
Right.
and I mean, it's like I said to you via text, like it in the beginning, like the first 3 or so chapters, you do have to put it with Kenton almost feeling like a very tropey kind of character.
Yeah.
I mean, so like think about the protagonist trope, from any main movie or book or TV show that you've seen, and there may be some format of that in Kenton. Is he, the underdog amongst his peers? Check. Or is he the last of his kind in certain ways? Check. Is he?
He's half Darksider.
Yep.
He's different from everyone.
He's different from
everyone.
everyone.
He's got to go through that.
Mm-hmm.
He's almost got the fucking like Harry Potter. They make him sleep under the stairs shit. And then it's like, he's like the lowest Sandmaster. He can only control the one measly ribbon of sand, and that makes him lesser than.
Yep.
And yeah, I agree. I think that throughout this story, they add layer after layer to him, and the character growth for Kenton is off the chain here.
It is,
and this is something. This is Sanderson's bread and butter, right? When he was in in college, he had a writing group. And so it was a bunch of prospective authors, and they would just sit around and write together and, share their stories with each other and give feedback to everyone on them. And one of the earliest works that he wrote was about this magic school, right? And it's all these kids that attend this magic school, kind of a Hogwarts-esque type thing. Right. And his colleagues are reading, and they're like, these fucking characters are all super interesting and we really like them. And they're like, so is there an evil guy that's going to try to take over the school and they're going to stop him? And he's like, no. And they're like, so what's going to happen? And he's like, well, it's just going to be about these characters and their little adventures at the school. Nope. What do you mean? What's going to happen? and that was kind of the thing that he had to overcome, where it's even in that infancy, his idea of character building, character development was always there. But one of his professors gave him the advice is what you're doing with these characters is amazing, but the universe has to be at stake, And that was one of the things where he had to sort of develop that. And that can feel in itself tropey, and you have to kind of avoid that. And when I started reading this story and got introduced to Kenton, I was like, this is a weird Sanderson character. But as time went on, I was like, no, this is straight up a Sanderson character, because your expectations get subverted in a good way.
Yeah, and in a good way, which is a rarity these days. Yeah. But I really like the stakes in the story that you mentioned them, because, I mean, you could argue that really it's not that the universe isn't at stake here in this book. The world technically isn't really at stake here. Now, Chrysala, she has quite the crisis on her hands. Yeah. Her nation is going to be under siege if she doesn't come up with a way to to provide aid. But as far as Kenton goes, is my the DM, and so for him, his goal isn't so much to, if I don't do this, then the whole world will fall apart. It's if I don't do this, then my tradition, what my father fought for, this will all go away, and I have to do something. And then along the way, he realizes he needs to not only protect it, but change it.
Right.
And so I like that the
It's like if the
stakes.
Jedi had been smart.
Yeah. It's like if they had actually been smart and wanted to evolve with the times instead of keeping to the archaic ways.
Like if Qui-Gon had lived and
Yeah.
like become the head of the council, like this is what would have happened. You
Right.
know?
That's really what it is, right? Yeah. Like if they had listened to Qui-Gon and be like, you know what, maybe some of our ways are just, old stuffy tradition just for fuck's sake. But what Kenton does here, like, is pretty incredible because you can tell that the tradition of the DM is very important to him. But then as time goes on, he's like, if we're going to survive, then we have to adapt.
Yeah.
And I think that was a really cool play on it. And again, it was just also refreshing just to see that if he didn't succeed, it would have sucked, but life would have went on.
Right. And I also love how like the Sandmasters here are so secluded. It's like in their own little world, they're like, we're so important, all this other shit. But then when he actually gets out into the real world and sees people's actual perceptions of them, it is completely different. Even to the point where they're hated by many groups and many like just common people because they're just kind of seen as this drain on society, right? Their arrogance is frankly overwhelming, and he starts to realize like, oh, this is the perception. I always thought I was part of this really prestigious organization, but that's not the case at all. And like, I want to be part of this, but like now I have to do some real fucking work to make that true,
And not to get us off topic here or to move ahead, but that did remind me of like another character who I didn't think I would like too much because you can kind of see the writing on the wall with him and see where they're going. But then, like you said, they subvert expectations in a very cool way. Would you pronounce it Dryle or Drill?
Dryle.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Early in this book, you really do think that you're like, this is going to be Kenton versus Dryle. This is fucking Harry Potter versus Lucius Malfoy, whatever.
Yeah.
You really think that this is going to be the setup.
Right.
But I don't think, that's not really what the fucking book is about at all, really.
No. Yeah. It's like there's some of that there, but then even then the context isn't what you think it would be.
Right.
Especially when you see, and I'm sure that this was done purposely, but some of the things that Kenton first accuses Dryle of doing, Kenton ends up kind of doing himself.
Yeah.
And so it was cool to kind of see how that resolves itself,
And Dryle is kind of pain. First of all, his name's Dryle.
Yeah.
He just sounds like a dickbag.
It rhymes with vile on purpose.
Yeah. and you're like, they kind of like, they show you the trope to make you, they use the trope against you, essentially. They're like, yeah, this guy's a fucking dickbag.
And he's so powerful,
Yeah, and then they just toss you down that fucking cliff.
Yeah.
And you're like, man, that fucking Dryle son of a bitch, he betrayed the fucking Sandmasters.
Right. And you're with Kenton in the beginning because you have no reason not to believe Kenton's theories. Oh, it was Dryle it's Dryle who's probably sending these assassins.
Yeah.
Like, it is.
Fucking Dryle. At the end of the day, like, their goals are pretty readily aligned,
right?
Honestly, and don't get me wrong, Dryle is an arrogant asshole, but like he wasn't in any way like what Kenton was trying to make him out like he was this real like big antagonist or whatever. They ultimately had the same goals, they just had a slightly different ways of going about it,
right?
And even early in the book, Kenton's like, this motherfucker is gonna undo all our traditions or whatever, and then throughout the course of this story, he's like, oh, we have to tear all those down, actually.
Right. Yeah.
And Dryle saw that shit way before he did.
Right. And they both kind of thought that the other was, the real ops,
Yeah.
Like, you're here trying to undermine and underdo the good that I'm trying to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing too, is it's so many times like a conflict like this is misunderstanding in real life. And we see that here with the two of them, where it goes back to that old like I always in fantasy you can reference Tolkien, right? It's when Faramir shoots the guy off of the fucking elephant's back or whatever, and he's like, this guy works for the enemy, but was he really evil? Like what lies took him from his home and brought him here? What false promises, got him out here and, in a situation where he was going to throw his life away. It's that kind of thing where it's like, the perception, like, or the facts and the way the facts are built into a certain perception, that can make or break any situation.
Yeah.
And that's really what they're trying to get at here with Kenton and Dryle, I think.
Right.
But let's talk about Chrysala, man.
Yeah.
We got to get into the Duchess of Drip. So she is from, I'm going to pronounce it as Elis, the country that she comes from.
Yeah, that's how I chose to do it as well. Yeah.
And she is what they call a star carved. And so we talked a little bit about the magic system earlier. So she has these kind of like magical tattoos. Like I said, we don't actually know what her power set is. But if I had to guess, her star marks give her long life, or she has found some other way of obtaining that. Those definitely exist in the Cosmere, but we might have to save that for the deep dive at the end.
Gotcha.
Because slightly, I'm gonna put that in the too spoilery for this part column.
Fair enough.
So yeah, as I said earlier, she is Cosmere wide. So in the universe, she is the most advanced scholar of magic. She has documented. She has a book called the Ars Arcanum. This is basically the closest thing that exists to like a wizard's spell book, and where she has documented basically every magic system. I really fucking wish I had brought another Cosmere book and could show that to you. You have to remind me to do that.
Yeah.
But in every single Cosmere book, other than this one, and this one now has a fuck ton of her notes in it. There is a section in the back where Chrysala talks about the planet. There's even it's not an omni, but it's a collection of novellas and different little short stories, and it's called Arcanum Unbound, and it is basically written by Chrysala. The entire book is, and it's basically, I went to this planet, and then she'll talk about the intricacies and the unique things about that world and their magic system, and then there'll be the like novellas and short stories from that planet. So it's all like really in-depth, like in-world stuff from her. And she even so I talked earlier a little bit about the cognitive realm. There's a city there called Silverlight, and she actually founds a university there after the events of this book.
Oh.
So she goes on to do some very intricate shit, and I think her overall role in the Cosmere has yet to be seen. Like, I think she has a lot left to do. So she is a very important character in the overall story of things.
Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I can see it, but man, like just from reading this, because again, it's such a self-contained story. Like just reading this, I'm like, she leaves the planet.
Yeah, right. Well, and this is kind of her origin, to an extent.
Yeah. So you would say that this takes place before?
It definitely takes place before any of the shit I was just talking about. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't off the top of my head. So there's not an official Cosmere timeline per se, and the reason for that, they are going to put one out. But the reason they haven't is they don't want to redact it. So
gotcha.
there's certain things that, like, may change in the very near future, and they don't want to have to go back and retcon. So he's like, when we put the timeline out, that's going to be the timeline.
That's fair.
And if I had to, and this is kind of rabbit hole, right? But so next November, I'm going to Dragonsteel Con for the release of Stormlight 5. And the reason that Stormlight 5 is such a huge deal is it is essentially, so it's a couple things, right? So the Stormlight Archive is 10 books and a collection of novellas. And these are the monsters, right? These are all 1,000+ pages.
Right.
Stormlight 5 is going to be basically the end of Stormlight Volume 1. It's going to be the first time we've had a Stormlight era end. And it basically represents the halfway mark of the Cosmere. So I think we're around 20 to 25 novels and novellas.
Damn.
And that will be the halfway mark. So it to say that it's the most important book yet, I haven't read it yet. Obviously, I wish I had, but I don't think that's an understatement.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds. I mean, hell, even from someone who isn't familiar with the Cosmere, that sounds like a book of fucking epic proportions.
Yeah, and I think that shortly after that, we will get the timeline. Because I think at that point, everything in the first half of the overarching story will be set in stone, and then I think he can put the timeline out. But looking at what I've got here, like just based on what we do know, is that White Sand takes place between Elantris, which is one of the earliest things in the Cosmere, and before Mistborn. So we see Chrysala in the end. That's not really a spoiler. At the end of Mistborn Era 1, we actually see Chrysala doing Chrysala shit. So it can't be very long.
Gotcha.
After this, that she makes it off world.
Yeah.
And we know that she cannot return. So as far as like how she ends up making it off world, who fucking knows?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, man, it's interesting, right? Because this book, it has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it all reads as one cohesive story. But at the same time, you also find yourself wondering so many questions.
Right. Yeah. Does she go back and overthrow the Empire? We don't know.
Right. Yeah. Does
I still don't fucking know.
Yeah. I'm like. So are the Sandmasters, like, are these guys able to do their thing on Darkseid?
Right. Does she figure that out?
Yeah. Does she figure that out? What the fuck with Bayon?
Well, and she also, one of her like major things that she's trying to do in current day is on Rashar, one of the forms of investiture is called Stormlight, and it's a very unique form of investiture. It's from the Honor Shard, and she's trying to figure out how to get it off world, because that's a thing that no one has figured out yet, is how to actually get Stormlight out of Rashar. Because they want to trade it. They want to use it in other worlds. And it may be that she plans to come back to Taldane and use Stormlight to charge the sand on Darkseid. It's entirely possible. Yeah. So, or she may just want to use it for Stormlight things, which are considerable, because you can fucking control gravity and stuff. So,
jeez.
It's possible that like her whole deal is that she wants to come back to Taldane and like defeat the Empire. But, I mean, it's got to have been hundreds of years at this point.
Yeah, so that's what I was wondering, too. Like, that would take a lot of time, and you get the idea that time is really not on her side here.
Right. Yeah. If I had to guess, I think Elis probably gets destroyed, and she probably loses that fight and leaves the planet.
See, that's also kind of what I was thinking, but I also kind of feel like we're supposed to think that just because of how dire all the situations are here.
Right.
Because if you look at what her goal is here, Chrysala's, like, what she has to do, it's a long shot, to say the least,
Right.
She has to make the trek, over to Dayside successfully. She has to avoid the dangers and pitfalls of this new terrain. She has to get around the language barrier. She has to hopefully find these, what she calls sand mages, to see, are they even fucking real? And if she even can find them, can she communicate with them and bring them back to Darkseid? Would they be willing to help? And then there's the whole thing with Kenton, and now, he's leading the DM, and there's, and then he has his own struggles. Like, he has to, he has to convince all the other, what are they called?
Taishan.
Yeah, all the other, Taishan, to vote for him.
I should have made you a copy of this.
Yeah. And yeah, and he has to convince the entire everyone else in the Taishan to to vote to keep the DM alive, and it's a whole thing. And I'm like, even if she does help Kenton succeed, is he gonna have the resources to part unto her?
Right.
And if he does, will the Sand Masters will they even be able to function outside of Dayside?
Well, and not to get ahead of ourselves, but they take a bunch of sand with them.
Yeah.
And theoretically, that sand has already been invested, and it should work, but it can't. I mean, can she figure out how to recharge it over there?
Yeah.
That's the big question mark.
Yeah.
If anyone can fucking figure out, it is her.
Oh yeah.
Because she figures out things about sand that these motherfuckers been using it for thousands of years and don't know shit.
Yeah. I also get the idea that, man, they don't really. I'm not going to say that they don't care, but they never really thought to think about it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I hate to make this fucking comparison because somebody's going to groan at it, but like, it's the Force and she's fucking discovered midichlorians.
Right.
I mean, that's really what it is here.
Yeah.
But they're looking at it as a religion, and she's like, no, it's fucking science.
Yeah.
And then she's just like, I wonder how much fucking science there is out there. And then she goes and finds out.
Right.
The other major character that we got to talk about here is Ace.
Yeah. She comes along pretty late in the story.
Yeah, and when they first introduced her, I was like, what kind of fucking Incredible Hulk fucking character we got here? Like, because I was waiting on her to just go completely ape shit or like transform into a monster or, something.
I mean, yeah, she's I dug this character a lot here, and
I didn't think so when they introduced her. I was like, I'm not gonna fucking like this person.
So, Kenton didn't need another antagonist, and at first, this is kind of what she poses as. Yeah. Even though she has to kind of be his protector.
Yeah.
But we do kind of get a retelling of the story where, okay, maybe the enemy isn't as bad as I perceived, and I, in the beginning, like I think she was interesting to me because it was such a conflict of interest, that character, because technically, she's not doing anything wrong, she's upholding her duty. But at the same time, she is just so antagonistic towards who up until this point has been like our main protagonist.
Right.
And so how am I supposed to take this character?
Yeah.
And I like that I had that confliction.
And she's getting, Kenton's getting attacked, and she's like, I wish they would fucking kill him.
Right.
But I have to protect him. That's my fucking duty. And she's, and he right off the rip is like, so you were sent here to spy on me.
Mm-hmm.
And she's so conflicted about her entire life, right? Like, she has this entire concept of, duty versus her family and her own well-being and her own, like, peace, which she has none of, for sure. But, and like, also, like, balancing her religion against all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Because she's very devout, and I like the holes that he, the kind of, like where he's just kind of poking holes in like real religions, here, where he's just like Ace is this person who's full tilt indoctrinated, and she believes all the like we're the good guys stuff. There's parts in here where she's like, well, I mean, they would never do that because that's not according to the teachings in our holy book or whatever. Right. And, anybody who's a part of this religion is a good guy.
Yeah.
And, she comes to see the flaws in that and, like, the way that it gets used to, manipulate people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like, I mean, it's just to use an example here. Like, if you get, like, a super fundamentalist Christian, who's taught certain ideas about the way that people operate in the secular world, and they come across someone who's agnostic or atheist, they may be taught that those people are,
they're bad.
Yeah, they're bad. Yeah. And I mean, but what if that bad person, saves your life or saves your family and doesn't do it for any ulterior motives, but you get the idea that this person's doing it because, I mean, this is the right thing to do.
Right.
That kind of plays a conflict of interest because you're supposed to hate that person, but here you are now, and this person just did you a solid.
I'm sure that Brandon wasn't using this character to poke at Mormonism. I'm certain that wasn't his intent.
See, and that's the crazy thing, right? Because especially after having read this, just like the smallest bit of his work, I'm like, this man wants to leave Mormonism so bad.
Well, actually, I think I actually don't think that's true. I actually think that the diem is actually meant almost as a symbol for that.
Yeah, that does make sense too.
I think Brandon wants to change it.
Yeah.
Rather than leave it.
That does make a lot of sense.
Yeah. I think that is kind of what he had in mind when he was creating the DM.
Yeah. I get that.
It hasn't gone well. They fucking really hate him over there.
Right. Yeah.
And the irony is he's like the most famous Mormon person.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially like the ones who are like actively and attending. Donny Osmond, he's not really done much since, the Mulan song.
Right. And Sanderson has, not really in this book because it's an early work, but, he has trans characters in his works.
Oh, that's a big no-no for,
Yeah. He has gay characters, and a lot of things about that is like, that is never, and this is a thing that he is so good with. It doesn't matter what aspect, what like societal like niche that the character fits in. Do they have a disability? Are they autistic? Are they gay? Not that that's a disability, but it's a trope / characteristic, right? Are they trans? Are they gender fluid? Anything like that, right? Are they asexual? Mm-hmm. That is never their character,
right?
And I think that's so important. As a matter of fact, one of the novellas. If I couldn't think of the name of this, I would never forgive myself. Dawn Shard actually follows two characters. Both of them have very heavy disabilities. One of them is about a girl named Risen, and she's paralyzed from the waist down. And then the other one is a character named Lopin, who is missing an arm. Kay and I kind of went back and forth about this. Mm-hmm. We're not really sure where the arm stops. We need him to clarify how much nub is there.
Yeah, is it actually
is it like here or is it like here? I need to know. Yeah. I need to see on the. I need a chart.
Right.
Or a percentage. Whatever. Yeah. It's great because they're both super beloved characters that have all these different aspects to them that have nothing to do with those characteristics, right? And that's one of the things that he's super well known for.
Yeah.
And you don't really see it in this book either, but, well, I guess in this book, a lot of it is more based around, like, religion. You can see all these parallels with religion here. But, a lot of the things he likes to do, too, is, like, poke fun at, like, societal norms or tropes or constructs. For example, on Rashar, there is the Vorin religion, and they all, or it's really more society. It is a religion, but it's more of a societal construct. Kind of like, the fucking evangelicals in the U.S., right? Like, how based on a religion really is that? You know? It's like, you guys got that book, but you're not really going by it.
Right, yeah. And it also leans back to tradition and why is that so important?
Yeah. Yeah. And in their religion, or their society, like, men don't read.
Yeah.
Also, women's left hands are super sexualized. like they wear the fancy women, their dresses have what's called a safe pouch. So it's basically like a long sleeve that covers their hand.
Yeah.
And kind of your middle or lower class, they wear a glove. But like a woman's left hand is super ultra sexualized. It's called their safe hand.
Hey man, dog. I don't know if you've ever seen any bare woman hands, but that shit, especially the left one. The right one, I mean, I can give or take.
Yeah.
But that left one.
But they have all these like super strict, weird as fuck traditions, and he uses that to like, to contrast with our society of like, these are dumb fucking things that we care way too much about.
And it's great. But the unfortunate part is the people who need to
read this never will. Yeah.
Well, even if they do, they're so deep in their way of thinking that the hypocrisy is lost on them. They can be like, well, that's dumb. And not even get that they're doing the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the neo-Nazi that likes Star Wars, right? Yeah. It's like, this is a one-to-one comparison to you. Even in the sequel trilogy, the First Order are neo-Nazis.
Right.
It's like, these people have the same shitty beliefs that the old Empire did, but they're also incompetent fucks.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
That's like the one thing in the sequel trilogy where the symbolism actually like matches up, like it's actually worth something.
That is true. Yeah. Yeah, Hitler's dead and gone, but man, people still want to follow this guy.
Yeah. And they're all morons.
Yeah.
And it's just like, what the fuck? So that's one of the things that he's always been so good at here, and I think that that was really present throughout this whole story, where you could easily contrast what was happening and see parallels in our society and in our world. And that's always really important with fantasy, right? Because that's what anchors it to reality.
Right. Yeah. And that's like the mark of just a good storyteller, right? And a good storytelling period is, and shout out to the homie Joe. This is something like he and I like not argue, but we debated about when he was last on the podcast. And actually, I think we had this conversation off mic, like after it was over, just talking about the difference between like settings. And like for him, he likes a real world setting, and I was like, there's no difference between like Marvel's New York or DC's Gotham City.
Right?
It's the same thing. But and like the point I was trying to get at though is that it's not about how fantastical a person may seem. I said Thor's one of the most relatable characters you can find in comic books, and he's a god, But it's not his powers that make him relatable. It's who he is and how he falls and his shortcomings and how he overcomes those things. That's what makes him so human. That's what makes him so personable. So it's how you're able to translate people, and not so much how you're able to imitate what you think people are,
Right. Exactly. And I think a lot of the things with these like fantastical settings is it's so interesting to see that it doesn't like, and that's kind of like one of the points here is, Roshar is nothing like our world. Mm-hmm. Taldane is so far from being anything like Earth. But it's irrelevant because the characters are there. And the setting, while the setting is awesome and it plays into the story, at the end of the day, you have interesting characters or you don't.
Right.
And we do here.
Yeah.
Which was really fucking nice. I want to talk about some of the minor characters and then we'll get into the major plot lines. Mm-hmm. So we have Auric.
Yep.
Who's like Kenton's childhood friend.
Yep.
I actually really fucking liked this character by the end of the book.
Yeah, so I really liked him too. I did have like a minor kind of gripe, and it was, I guess the gripe was I get it, like I understand what the arc here is with him, and I think it's really good, but this is one of those cases where like I think that you can just let the artwork tell more of that story than the written dialogue. Like I don't really necessarily need to see so many people talk about how they've seen this shift in Eric now.
Yeah.
Like
I
I think
agree.
just in like his visual demeanor, how he's drawn, you see he is changed from how he was in just the previous chapters.
There is some of that, and I noticed that too. I actually read like the last chapter today.
Okay, yeah.
And yeah, there's definitely where there's that scene where he goes ape shit, which was awesome.
Yes.
And then everybody's like, "Did you see Art go ape shit?" Art's really different, man. He wasn't like that a minute ago. And there's like a couple pages of that.
Yeah.
And like Crisala's like, "Hey, did you see your childhood friend Art? He's acting really fucking weird, bro." And I was like, "Yeah, man, we get it." I feel like that was really like heavy handed.
Yeah.
It didn't hurt the moment, but I was just like, "Can we? We know.
Yeah.
Can we? And I love that once again, Sanderson uses the trope against us here because it's like, oh, my childhood friend has suddenly returned as soon as all this bad shit happens.
Right.
And they kind of, make you lean towards it's going to be Arik, man. He's going to be the dick bag.
But I was so worried about the vote,
Especially because he doesn't do anything.
Right.
Yeah. And like he's comic relief for the first 2 acts.
Oh yeah,
and he was great comic relief too.
Well, even like one of the times that you kind of see him earlier on in the book with when he shows up around the same time as Ace, and it's like, oh well, this guy is clearly talented, like but also very whimsical,
Yeah, I love the restaurant. Where where he's getting fucking assassinated, and he's just trying to.
Oh
eat,
yeah, just trying to.
Yeah. And he's like, I'm definitely giving this place a terrible review.
Right.
It's not, I loved that. He was great comic relief. Also, Bayon is another character that I thought was really interesting here.
Yeah.
He kind of starts off as that, once again, kind of tropey. He's the stern bodyguard who's like, he's like the Alfred. He's like, you got to be careful of this, got to be careful of that, And he is not afraid to blast a motherfucker.
Oh, he will blast.
Yeah, he needs his own Danny DeVito meme.
Oh, yeah.
Like, so I started blasting.
Man, what you think about like his arc here? Did you see this coming or?
It's interesting, right? Like to see where his loyalty is. I always thought that he would be back. The interesting thing, like, where, he's got the pistols where she observes, like, oh, hey, these are these specific guns. And he's just kind of like, he doesn't bullshit her.
Yeah.
He immediately comes clean. He's like, I did this shit, and this is what I was here for.
And I had to go back and reread that because I was like, if I just read it the way I think I read that, he has her dead to rights.
Yeah.
And Crisala recognizes that.
Yeah. And I don't think he was going to pull the trigger on her.
I don't think so either.
Because he wasn't sent there to assassinate her.
Right.
He was sent there to make sure that the Sandmasters weren't going to be a problem for the Empire.
Yeah.
And once he's done that, he's like, well, that duty is fulfilled.
Right.
I'm not bound by it any longer. And I love that he came back around. And we kind of, end of the book seems to imply that he actually can use the sand.
Oh, it heavily implies that.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. And I'm like, motherfucker. Because honestly, man, if there's ever a sequel to this, I could see this motherfucker like using sand and guns.
Oh, yeah.
And probably doing some of that shit that Kenton pulled, but like way more efficiently.
Yes. What if he just has like one giant ribbon?
Dude. Like honestly, that is horrifying. That actually that would put him up there with some of the Cosmere's most creative killers. So, and that's a tall order.
Oh.
And then I don't want to go through them all, but we have the Taishan. And most of them play they play roles of like varying degree, right? Like, I think the person we see the most is probably the judge, Helis.
Yeah, Helis. Well,
obviously the Lord Mastral is who we spend the most time with.
Yeah,
but
yeah, right, yeah. But I was gonna say the
The general?
No.
Radget. The admiral?
Admiral, yeah.
Delius.
Delius, yeah.
Yeah. His arc was fucking awesome.
It was.
I did not see that shit coming at all.
Yeah, I was like, because you get the idea that there's something going on with the guy, but I never could piece together what it could have been.
Yeah, and he's got this whole, like, fucking Count of Monte Cristo arc.
Oh, yeah. 1,000%.
And he just, I loved. So Sanderson is so famous for what we call the Sanderlanche, which is he tends to, in the last 10 to 20% of the book, just fucking snatch the rug out from under you. Mm-hmm. And either he snatches the rug out from under you, or like that last portion of the book is just nonstop. Reveal, action, reveal. And that's how it is in this.
Yeah.
Like, those last 3 or 4 chapters are fucking insane.
Oh, absolutely.
And it doesn't feel rushed.
Yeah.
It feels like a natural conclusion to things, but, you know, third acts are easily like Hollywood's weak point.
Yeah.
But it is so interesting that they're his strong suit.
Right. Yeah, because I think I was even telling you this around the time that I was finishing it. Like, man, like the way it ends is just so, like, so well paced, and I mean, it's just like it's like a roller coaster if it has nothing but like upward trajectory.
Yeah,
I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah, that's the Sanderlanche, my friend, and it fucking it did not disappoint in this book. I mean, it's hard to put it down in that last volume, you know. Yeah. And it's crazy to think in the original editions that, like, that's where they fucked most of the art up. You know? The Taishan, though, we spend various amounts. Like, I thought that Vey had a good arc. Mm-hmm. Obviously the stuff with the Lord General, Aric's dad. The way he fucking went out was awful, dude.
Oh, god damn, that was. Yeah, imagine your eyelids cut off on like a terrible Scarecrow DMT trip.
Yeah, yeah, basically, and like it doesn't help that, you know, on this side of the planet, darkness is not something that they experience.
Right.
So just imagine that it's daytime for your entire life, and then all of a sudden, like, you're in darkness. They're all horrified.
Oh yeah, it'd be terrifying for them.
Yeah. So this man gets tied up. Poisoned, has his eyelids cut off, and basically, he basically like scarecrowed himself to death, or got scarecrowed to death,
right?
With the hallucinogenics, essentially, and he basically had a living nightmare until he died. Yeah, and there's no telling how long it took.
Right, and I'm like, that is fucking awful.
Yeah, yeah,
and the whole time, like, they're talking about, you know, like what must have happened to him. I'm like, isn't Auric right there? Yeah. I was like, the fuck? Yeah, I had the same thought, man. Some of them, though, like the Lord Mason, they did not have shit for this motherfucker to do. Lord Farmer, you know. Yeah.
Although I do want to talk about the Lord Beggar, which is Nilto.
Oh, now this was interesting.
This was really cool. Yeah. I did not see that shit coming with it being
with him being given.
Yeah. That was so
that
cool.
shit. Yeah, I thought that was cool too. Especially considering that, you know, like it really made me want to go back and reread their first meeting. You know, because I'm sure there were some context clues dropped there.
Yeah,
you know. But
now when he called her Chris later on, I did pick up on that.
Okay.
Because she mentions it earlier when Kenton... Because, you know, I've called her Chris forever.
Yeah.
So it was interesting being here, and she's like, oh, yeah, only my fiance would call me that or whatever. And I was like, huh. And, you know, I didn't know if they were going to call her Chrysala for the whole book or not until I got to that part.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So some of the plot lines that we have here are really fucking cool. So let's talk about the kind of... So we have the leader of the nation of Kurzta, which is where Ace is from. She practices that religion. And this is who they basically, early on in the book, assassinate the DM. They had this mass assassination of what they believe are all the most powerful Sandmasters. They overwhelmingly kill them. They order 66 these motherfuckers.
Oh, yeah.
And they are constantly hunting Kenton throughout the entirety of the book. What'd you think about this, like about that arc and how it resolves?
Yeah, so I thought that I enjoyed it as a whole, but for me, the conclusion was much more satisfying than the premise of it.
Right.
Like I get the idea, yeah, like, all these Sandmasters, like they're just being decimated right now. But the reveal that, okay, why were so many of them
ineffective?
Yeah. Like why were they burning out so quickly?
Yeah.
Why were they overmastering so much? And then come to find out there is a reasoning for that. And there's a person behind that. And it is not who you expect it is. Whoever you guys may think it is, it's not who you expect it to be.
And we're full tilt spoilers for White Sand at this point. So when I started to suspect Ellerin when he put him in charge of running shit.
Really?
Yeah. When he's like, I don't have time to take care of shit around here. Yeah. I need you to do it. That was about the time, because he said something like, well, he's the most trusted guy here. I was like,
See, I would have felt for that shit too. I was like, Ellerin's great. Like,
I was right there, but there was just something about that shit that was just like, it just felt like, oh yeah, sure, we'll fucking put this guy in charge, and I was like, this shit seems, I don't know, like that's when I started to smell it.
Well, I was like, man, poor Ellerin, like he's also overmastered. He can't use his powers, and like, man, but he's still trying to, work for the DM. Like, man, what a guy.
Right? Yeah, you got to climb up those fucking ladders every day. I love that they were like coming to him with all that like fucking really specific bullshit.
Right. So how many steps should we put on the ladder? Because if it's just 12, it might not. There'll be like a bigger step. But if there's 13, then it's too many.
He's like, I gotta get the fuck out of here right now. So I want to pause there and ask you this, because I know you're such an action person.
Yeah.
What do you think about the action in this book?
Extremely creative, right? So when you see the ribbons in use for the first time, you're like, wow, that's really, really cool. I think in the hands of like lesser writers or lesser artists, that can get stale pretty quickly, even still. Like once the once kind of the allure of the uniqueness of that kind of fighting wears off. But it's the creativity that really makes this so cool to see, because you kind of wonder, okay, how is Kenton going to overcome these odds? When he has one ribbon, and people who have several times more than him are, out here doing things that Kenton should not be able to do, and so the creativity comes in. Okay, how can we sell to the reader that this guy who has a fraction of power that some of these other guys have can do similar feats,
And it's the Batman thing. It's skill versus power.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. And again, like that kind of awareness of characterization is really what kind of continuously drew me into the story. Like even when we get to the Kenton versus Drow fight. He had, spoiler alert, he now has 5 ribbons at this point.
Right.
Like, holy shit. I'm like, man, that's like 5 times as many as you started off with. But Jarl has 5 times as many as you have.
Yeah.
But he tries to utilize the 5 ribbons to win the fight, and he's getting his ass whooped.
Yeah, because he tries to be something he's not, right? He tries to go power for power.
Right.
And then he eventually realizes that like his master, pun intended, well, fuck it, pun intended.
Yeah.
Is what's going to let him win this.
Yeah.
Because he's efficient.
Right.
This motherfucker's burning through his fucking sand or through his water.
Mm-hmm.
And we really didn't talk about the water aspect of it, but
Right.
Water is the way that they focus the sand or the investiture in this magic system, and that's kind of what limits you from being just a fucking god who can just like summon the goddamn desert.
Right.
You only got so much water, and he's like, I could keep this shit up forever. Mm-hmm. You got 25 ribbons over there.
Yeah.
You about to be thirst.
Right.
He's like, I can do this shit for hours with my one.
It was this my one.
Yeah.
And that's what he ends up resorting to.
Yeah.
Like his one, because that is what he's good. That's what got him so skilled in the first place, is learning how to utilize just the one that he had. You know? So yeah. Moral of the story, don't ditch the girl that got you to the dance.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I loved the scene with the table where he's fighting the guys that have the I forget what it's called, but is it Terzin?
Oh, the arrows.
Yeah, they have the arrows that are resistant to the sand, and
Yeah.
their armor is resistant to the sand. And he's like, okay, but that don't protect you from like bludgeoning damage.
Right, yeah.
And then he fucking hits them with the table.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I love that scene. That was maybe my favorite action scene. I also loved like the very interesting ways we see him use his ribbon early on when he's running the Maestral's trial or whatever, and they subverted expectations with that too, because that's one of those things where you're like, he's gonna fail it, and then later on in the book he's gonna come back and do it, but like he's already at the point where he can do it.
Yeah.
Even to the point where there's a giant fucking monster at the end.
Right.
And he still overcomes that shit.
Oh yeah.
You know?
And doesn't he find like an extra one that most people have just missed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he ends up like destroying the whole thing. Yeah. And there was just some really creative ways that they used the environment and stuff like that in the action in this book. And I was really thrilled by it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, because it's like from a creative standpoint, the possibilities are only limited to the imagination of the writer or the artist,
Yeah.
And that's what I really enjoyed about, specifically, like the sand mastery in this book was how they utilized that. But man, I thought that all the action in this was pretty good, to be honest with you. Like, I like seeing Ace. I like seeing her fight. Same thing with Arik when he let loose. Like, that was really cool to see.
Bayon, seeing him fucking blast people.
You're right.
I also really love that scene where Kenton picked up the guns.
Oh,
with
yeah.
the sand and used that shit.
That was one of my favorite scenes.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorites.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. One of the coolest and I think most unique arcs here is, the Sandmasters get eradicated, and like Kenton becomes the Lord Mastral, and it's just like, oh, okay, cool. I figured that might have happened at the end or something, And then come to find out that the Taishan are going to use this to dismantle the Sandmaster. So it's like they are going to kick the shit out of you while you're already down.
Yeah.
And I thought that this arc was so unique in storytelling because this is not typically how it would go.
Right.
Typically, Dryle would have showed up and been like, no, I'm the real guy. Well, nobody saw them promote you, so I'm the real Sandmaster.
Yeah.
And then it would have been him. And then Kenton would have spent the whole rest of the story like trying to get his fucking Eye of the Tiger moment to fight Dryle,
Right.
And I'm so glad that it didn't go that way.
Same.
Because, not to say that wouldn't have been great, but we've seen it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like 100 times.
Right. And I mean, so in a odd twist of things, like it ends up being a political action thriller,
Right. And most of these characters, the Taishan, the ones that they focus on anyway, were so unique, and they weren't like they weren't stereotypes or tropey like you would think. Like, we've got the Lord Admiral with Delius, and we talked about how his arc was so fucking cool. You would think this guy's just a fucking sloppy drunk whatever, and it's just going to go that route. Or with the Lord General or whatever, you would think that he's going to be the tough guy, soldier, blah, blah, blah. And really, they just kind of, in the good way, subvert expectations with all of them. I think the only exception would be like Vey, who, you know, the secret of like the debt or whatever, I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
And Vey is exactly who you think he is when you first meet him.
Mm-hmm.
But it really wouldn't make any sense for him to be anybody else because he's the head of the fucking guild.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. 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 What's the name of the currency again?
Shit. Lax? Is it
Lax? Yeah. Yeah. Lax. Yeah.
Lax.
I'm pretty sure that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like 5 million of them bitches?
Yeah.
Like, goddamn, dog.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a lot. And and you know, Kenton really is placed in like what looks like an impossible scenario from so many directions, but it actually turns out like really awesome, and it doesn't feel plot armory or that he has like fucking protagonist syndrome or anything, you know.
Yeah, it's like they thankfully avoid that. But I mean, honestly, like in the hands of a lesser writer, it would have absolutely been that, you know.
Well, thankfully we had fucking Brandon Sanderson.
Right.
I liked Ace's little side plot here.
Mm-hmm.
The search for Sherazin.
Yeah, Sherazin. I did see this coming.
I saw this coming too.
Yeah.
Because I was like, Tane is not on screen enough.
Yeah.
And I knew it wasn't when they revealed that Gelvaldin was actually Milto.
I was like, he can't be both Gelvaldin and Sherazin. I'm like, ain't no fucking way.
And for a minute, I thought it might actually have been the Lord General. You know, when they do that reveal.
Yeah, me too. I thought that was a possibility.
But I was like, well, Tane is at least working for that motherfucker then.
Yeah.
Because it seems so like, you know, it's like as soon as they pulled Ace off of the investigation, all of a sudden this motherfucker can just do whatever. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, well, he's got help at a minimum.
Yeah.
But it turns out he just is this dude.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it's not to say that it wasn't effective. This would have bugged me if they had tried to unnecessarily spend more time with it or drag it out, you know?
Yeah.
But because they don't and they just kind of get to the reveal, I'm like, okay, this is what I thought it was, but the pacing on this is still really good and we're getting to the resolution, so.
Well, and the last thing that anybody would have suspected was that she was going to be friends with a Sandmaster.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And you know, she knew it. Like, Ace, she knew that she was almost fucked. You know, she, whether it was 100% on purpose or not, you know, she was placed in a kind of a Dark Knight Joker position.
Felt very much like that.
and she, you know, she made a decision, and she was like, oh, no, I may have just fucked my family.
Yeah.
And she would have had Kenton not, you know, thought ahead and been there.
It was interesting to see this very, like, tame, like, just very, like, at least from an outward perspective, like, we get her inner monologue, so we know that she's conflicted.
Yeah.
But outwardly, she's so, like, in control.
Oh, yeah.
This whole time. And as soon as she gets hit with this impossible scenario, she's just completely out of sorts.
Yeah.
You know, and it was interesting to see that, you know, where she's, like, not in control at all and just loses her shit. I thought that was great. And yeah, they I'm glad they didn't spend too much time on it. Like, they had the reveal and then the resolution. And really her arc here is more to do with her relationship with Kenton than it is. You know, this whole side arc for her is really just a facilitator of that.
Yeah.
You know? So let's talk about Chris's kind of main plot here, because she's here to find the sand mages, which is really ends up being a really funny moment in the book.
Right. The fuck is a mage?
And he's like, I don't know this word. And she's got one all along, which is pretty funny. But
yeah.
It was interesting to me that we see her fulfill her mission at the end. Mm-hmm. And they're on the boat, and they got the sand, and she's got some sandmasters, and they've got Hoyd with them too, unbeknownst to her probably at this point. And that dude is fucking insane. He also, interesting for him, is like one of his abilities is that he goes places or knows when to be somewhere for significant events to happen. So the first time you see him in the book is when the Taishan originally have the vote, like early on. He's there. And then you don't see him again until the end. So he doesn't necessarily know why he needed to be on Taldane until he gets there and sees the major event happen. But yeah, so he's on the ship with them. So obviously, like, I think that there's going to be some kind of story to what happens.
Yeah.
But I think that her whole journey here was really interesting because you think at the beginning of the book there's going to be some kind of conclusion to this whole, like, her country versus the Empire thing. But the book never really does that, but she still has a really satisfying arc at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is the interesting thing, right? Because I think that in a weird way, the book works better for that. Like, even though I don't know if we'll ever get like a graphic novel follow-up to this, but it creates the curiosity for it, which is always good, you know? And at the same time, the story does still leave off at a place that makes sense. Like, this feels like at least not the end of a story, but the end of a significant chapter, you know?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, Isaac is familiar enough with this material and, like, the care that he showed in getting this omnibus together. I would be completely okay with Isaac writing a sequel.
yeah.
Because Brandon having time to do that in the near future is
Unlikely.
Yeah, very unlikely because next year he has Stormlight 5 coming out, and in the gap between Stormlight 5 and 6, he is already committed to a Mistborn Era 3 trilogy.
Great.
So that'll be Mistborn 9, 10, 11. And then also a sequel to Elantris, possibly, and a sequel to Warbreaker, which we haven't talked about at all, that is really hotly anticipated. So, you know, and that's just like the stuff he's planning.
Yeah.
That doesn't include the random shit he's going to write just because he is who he is.
Which is just, that shit is so insane. Like, the man writes so much, and then it's like, you know, I got this other thing I'm going ahead and write.
Yeah. Well, that's what he does, is like when he gets like writer's block, he just writes something else. You know? He loves to write books. It's like his thing.
So basically you're saying that he's like George R. R. Martin. Like, those two are basically like same person in terms of work rate.
At what point do we start calling GRRM a former writer? Because I would be willing to bet you I've written more this year than he has.
God damn it, man.
I would put a paycheck on that bet.
You know, at first that sounded like no, but then I was like, yeah,
for sure.
100% you have. Yeah.
You got anything else to say about this before I just warn people and go off the fucking rails?
Just a few little things here. One, I really like how they handled the language barrier. First of all, I love that there was a language barrier, and I love how they wrote around it. You know,
yeah.
I mean, it makes sense, right? That they would not all speak the same fucking language. I love also that with the notes that take place at the end of each chapter, how they're there to enhance the story or to give you more lore or information on the world, and it's there if you want it. But if you choose to not read it for whatever reason, it's not going to hurt the story either. But
also with that language gap thing,
yeah,
I also love how they'll do the things where it's like, yeah, this person has to translate,
yeah,
and then they'll be like, with them translating,
and this is what they,
and they don't fuck around with it, you know,
yeah.
Anyway, you were saying,
you know, I also really appreciated that.
Yeah.
And that's why I said, like, I'm glad it's there, and I'm glad they handled it the way they did.
Yeah.
You know,
I don't think that shit was going to be good for 90 minutes.
Yeah, no. This book would be like twice as thick if they did that.
Yeah. Yeah, you'd have to double all the dialogue.
Yeah. I was really happy that they chose to not make Chrysala like a Sandmaster.
Yep.
I was like, I don't think she needs this. I'm like, she's so unique and intelligent and interesting all on her own. I'm like, this is just, in the words of Jim Cornette, putting a hat on a hat at that point.
Maybe one of her Star Mark powers gives her infinite drip.
That makes sense. Like, she's always drawn immaculately. Like, she just dripped out every time.
I love that scene where, like right when everyone, like, got murdered.
Oh, yeah.
And she's in the middle of the desert.
Yeah.
And she just walks into the tent looking fly as fuck.
Right.
And you're just like, is this necessary?
Yeah. Another twist I did not see coming. Again, slight spoiler alert. Kind of major spoiler alert. The, oh my gosh. I'm drawing a blank on his name. The actual assassin who was trying to kill Chrysala.
Yeah, he was a professor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember his name either.
But I didn't
see that shit coming.
No, me either. I thought he was on the up and up.
I thought something was going to be up with him when he, like, super accurate shot that dude.
Uh-huh.
But that was, like, right before the reveal.
Yep.
I was like, this supposed to be this guy's first time shooting a gun?
Right.
And he just rolled a 20?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
All right, I'm keeping my eye on you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's all I got, though, man. Like, this was... Yeah, I had a blast, like, reading this from top to bottom. And this is one of those books that I know that when I do read it again, I'm like, motherfucker, I should have seen that coming.
So I have 2 questions for you.
Yeah,
2 hot seat questions before I just go off the rails here and talk about some shit.
Okay.
Number 1, what would you rank this out of 10? Where you scoring this?
Ooh.
You should have known.
I should have seen this coming. I should have.
Yeah. And you can do this, and I can't, because if I score this, then I have to score everything else in the Cosmere in my head and compare it.
Oh, that would
can't do that.
That would cause you to like malfunction, you know.
Probably would. Well, like I know what there's a 10, and then I have to just figure it out from there.
Okay. Well, at least you know what your ceiling is. You can kind of
Yeah, the ceiling is 10.
Yeah. I think right now, if I had to review the book as a whole on a scale of 1 to 10, I think I'd probably give it a. I want to say like an 8.4 for my first read.
Okay.
Yeah. Like this was everything that a book like this I think needs to be. And this is coming from someone who has never read anything else in the Cosmere, you know. So there's plenty of lore in this, but not so much that I can't keep up with what's going on. There's plenty of characters, but they do a great job of kind of funneling the characters, so you always know which ones to pay more attention to. They do a great job with all the different story threads and beats. The action is great. They leave you wanting more. I mean, it does everything it needs to do. So yeah, I had a blast with this one. I can't imagine that they just leave it there. I'm pretty sure they probably have to do something more with it. Like you said earlier, though, it may or may not be with Dynamite unless they have some kind of contract. But.
Yeah. My follow-up question is more juicier.
Oh, boy.
So having read this and having experienced the storytelling, can I get you either in audio or video, or either in audio or text format to give Mistborn a try? Okay,
so I knew this was coming.
You should have known this.
I knew this was coming since you said, "Hey man, I got this book. I want you to."
Yeah. Yeah, this is the free sample from the drug dealer.
Yeah. I was a missionary who got people to read books and then ask them questions.
Yeah, okay.
So here's my answer to that, and that is yes. Now the issue is that while audio format would probably be the most reasonable, considering like my line of work.
Michael Kramer, who does the original Mistborn trilogy, is so good. I think that, especially like the later stuff, where you get into Stormlight and it's him and his wife and they alternate. The female point of view characters, she does those chapters and he does the male point of view chapters. To me, like certain audiobook narrators, I can't. I just can't. But I think Michael Kramer is the best.
Yeah.
The only exception to that would probably be, it's actually another Brandon Sanderson work. It's not in the Cosmere, but he has a Skyward series that's a little more YA than this is. Because I wouldn't consider this even remotely YA, but Skyward is definitely, like, the main character is like a 13-year-old girl or maybe she's 15 or something. But the audiobook narrator for that shit, it's written in first person, and she has an amazing fucking tone that just like really nails it for that story. It wouldn't work for this. But yeah, I mean, but I think Michael Kramer's the best at it. So
yeah. So my only, so like here's the whole layout though, because I have actually been thinking about this for quite some time because I kind of knew it was coming.
Right.
Yeah. So audiobook would be the most palatable, most reasonable way for me to consume Mistborn or any book, to be honest with you.
Right.
But as you may or may not be able to tell, I prefer to read physical.
Right. I do too. I can't read on my phone. I can't do it.
Oh no, I can't. Even on tablets, I can't. I mean,
So one of the novellas, the one I was talking about earlier, actually, Dawn Shard, it came out during the pandemic. And it's between two of the Stormlight books, and the next Stormlight book had come out already, and I had it in my hand. Mm-hmm. And they couldn't get the physical book printed for Dawn Shard. As a matter of fact, I want to say that my copy of that may still be in the plastic. And the reason is, the ebook, of course, you don't have to fucking make that up. It came out, but I was like, I'm going to read the next fucking book, and I have to read this first.
Yeah.
So I literally bought a Kindle Paperwhite, which is the closest thing to paper you can get. Mm-hmm. And I fucking read that novella, and then I returned it. I read this shit in like one sitting. And, yeah, man, I just, and that's like the closest that I could get. And even then, I don't like the thing because it feels clunky and slow. So, like, while the visual of it can trick my brain into thinking, yes, you're reading a book. Mm-hmm. The technology expert side of me is like, I can't deal with this clunky fucking contraption.
Yeah.
You know, and they don't design e-readers to feel like fast computers.
That's true. And, you know, it's crazy because it's like, you know, I don't recommend people go out and buy a bunch of fucking omnibus. But I'm like, if you guys want to read a bunch of comic books, just, if you have, you know, like $18 a month, get Marvel Unlimited and DC Infinite. Like those two apps alone will get you access to like tens of thousands of comic books, you know, whatever you're looking for. I can't do it.
Me either.
But
do you know how many books I probably would have read if I could do it, you know?
Yeah.
Because rather than have a fucking library, I mean, and mine's not even close to the room we're fucking sitting in. Yeah, I mean, fuck.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just, I could have the entire fucking Cosmere at my fingertips at any point in time, and that would be great, especially for situations like this. But yeah, I mean, well, fortunately for you, man, you really don't have to pick.
Yeah.
Because you can get the audio for Mistborn, and I can give you the book too. So you could, I mean, that's actually what I do with these. Not so much anymore, but when I used to drive all the fucking time, is I would read the book to a certain point, and then I would get in the car and I would listen to the audio, and then I would go back to the book.
Right.
And that worked out for me because a lot of times it is hard for me to start a series with the audio because I need to envision it and like I need to dive in. But once I'm familiar with the world, I'm fine with the audio.
Yeah.
Because now you're telling me about things I already have reference for.
Right.
So
yeah,
you really don't have to pick. So.
See, that's interesting because like my next follow-up statement was going to be I think what I am willing to do, like from you and from everyone else who you have infected with Sandersonism, this entire Cosmere, this entire connected universe is just amazing and fantastic. And I'm like, if it is as good as I keep hearing, then at least starting in audio, I don't think should be an issue for me.
I gotta say, like, the storytelling is always tremendous. And don't get me wrong, there are some dry spots in a couple of the books. Mm-hmm. I'm not gonna say that, go watch my ranking. There were a couple that made pretty low on the list. They're still great.
Yeah.
I just probably won't go back to them because if I'm going to reread something, it's not going to be those. And a lot of them, they kind of serve the overarching plot of the Cosmere, and that kind of harms the individual book. Kind of in like a Civil War or fucking Age of Ultron kind of way.
Yeah.
And if you're gonna tell these giant stories, then that's gonna happen sometimes. It's just unavoidable. But I don't think it's ever as egregious as some of the instances we've seen. So
right.
Yeah, man, I'm excited for that. I think Mistborn is you're such an action fan. Mm-hmm. And even if I can't get you into the Roshar stuff, which I don't know, man. Like, I know you love world building.
Yeah.
And the world building there it's immaculate. Those are the main two pillars, kind of the Cosmere is Stormlight and Mistborn. That's where all the real big shit's happening. And, Mistborn's action adventure, and I know you'll be able to sink your teeth into that because the way that Sanderson actually describes the action, I think it is his strong suit. I think that from his ability to describe magical fighting to me, either through the audio or through the text, I think that is absolutely the thing he excels at. Because I never have any problem picturing exactly what the fuck is happening.
Right.
And that, to me, I mean, I think that's going to be something that you really like. So,
well, shit, but now I'm looking forward to it then.
All right. Well, this is the point where I need anyone who doesn't want to get spoilerized to get the fuck out. You know who you are. So, and what's going to be interesting for you is, and that was the warning, by the way. Mm-hmm. If you're still here, proceed at your own peril. That was really to me, I think an interesting point of view that you're going to have because no one else that I've sent on this journey started here.
Yeah.
If anything, as a matter of fact, you and I are the only people that I know that have read this, offhand, in our circle. Kay is reading it now.
Right.
She may be done reading it. I don't know.
Yeah.
She reads fast as shit. She could read this in one sitting.
Yeah.
Easily.
Yeah.
You're going to have that connection to Chris that nobody else, even myself, had, where you get to the back of that book, you're going to be like, oh, I know, you're going to have that connection with her.
See, that's interesting because I didn't even think about it from that perspective.
Yeah. You would have that. You're going to have that heads up that we didn't have. And when you see her in the flesh for the first time, you're going to have that fucking DiCaprio pointing at the TV meme
Yeah,
moment,
yeah.
because it's super obvious when you're gonna see her.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is a while, but she will be around a lot. So I'm really interested to see where she goes.
That's I mean, that's good to know, and I'm curious about that point. Like, if she still be my favorite, or would it be someone else who usurps the spot?
Yeah, and she is a top 10 for me.
Okay.
Cosmere wide.
Yeah.
Fuck, man, there's so many like good characters. My favorite character in the Cosmere is from Mistborn, but I don't know, man. Her even being in the top 10 that's such a that's a fucking heavy list, my friend.
Yeah.
I would love to see more Kenton,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think that's going to happen unless we get a sequel to White Sand.
I was gonna say the same thing.
Because he should be dead, right?
Right. Yeah.
We don't even actually know how she is alive. I just know that she is alive.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see where all that goes. And he's also so good about these little stories, because even when you start Mistborn, I've kind of told you about the shards a little bit, and so you'll see. I think you'll see that because you're looking for it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so interesting that you have this overarching plot where you have all these fucking gods, essentially, that are fighting with each other over control of the Cosmere or the future of the Cosmere. They all have very different motives.
Yeah.
And to see that happening, and then to be able to zoom all the way in and care about Kenton, who's trying to uphold the traditions of his ancestors,
Right.
and to be able to care about that, but also see how it fits into that much larger puzzle as this just kind of tiny little cog in the machine. That shit is so well done.
Yeah.
I can't get over how well done it is. And I talked about this a little bit earlier. The people who picked up those 16 shards, not all of them necessarily like had the intention, because intent is a thing, right? Mm-hmm. So if you pick up honor, for example, you will be you at first with immense power. But over time, the intent of the shard would pull you to be more honorable.
Oh, okay.
And you will not be able to resist that.
Yeah.
And early on in the Cosmere, you kind of feel like Ruin is going to be this big fucking deal where you're like, I can't imagine anything worse than this.
Yeah.
This is a god who, kind of like Galactus, like his purpose, his nature is to dismantle things down to atoms, to their most basic
right.
blocks, Yeah, he is truly the opposite of preservation,
Yeah.
And to Ruin, you actually saw Ruin today. What? So that creepy fucking thing I posted in our D&D chat.
That was who that
That's
was.
Ruin, yeah.
I was like, what in the fuck? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and when you get to there's a certain point in the story you're going to get to where you're going to be like, this motherfucker, and it really relates to like what happened in our D&D campaign at the last meet. Yeah. So yeah, that was Ruin that I put in our chat, and yeah, when you look at that motherfucker, you're like, I can't imagine anything worse than this. But at the end of the day, man, Odium and Autonomy, I think, are much more horrifying. Because Autonomy, is a fucking world invader, and we don't actually even know how many worlds she has.
Right.
And every time she takes a world over, she's adding to her invading armies that she has at her disposal.
Yeah.
And we see that shit come into play pretty recently, where it's just like, okay, yeah, we've been worried about Odium this whole time, but we got autonomy here, and she is a bitch.
So throughout the course of the Cosmere thus far, have all 16 shards been personally introduced?
I want to say, let me just verify this. I want to say they have all been named. But it may be only 15 of them. Let me verify that. Yeah, 15 are known. 2 of the original shards, I shouldn't have even said that, are still not named. Yeah, using the word original there was interesting. But yeah, and so when you say introduce, so we know, for example, we know that Invention, Mercy, Valor, and Whimsy have all been name dropped. We have not been introduced to them.
Okay.
On screen. We have been introduced to Autonomy. Endowment is an interesting one. She's on the Warbreaker planet, which is Nauthus, and they have this really fucking interesting kind of system where their magic system is kind of based on like colors.
Huh.
And they have their form of investiture is like breath. And like everybody is born with breath, and you can give it away or have it taken from you technically. And so like some people can accumulate it. So it's like magical capitalism. And based on how much you have, you can do certain things, and you can their magic is called awakening. So like let's just say that you have some rope.
Yeah.
You can awaken that rope and tell it to go tie this motherfucker up, and it will come alive and go and do the thing. But that magic system's so intricate because your command words have to be, not only do your command words have to be accurate and simple, but they have to combine with your intent when you say them. Intent is very important throughout the whole Cosmere. It comes up a lot. Not all of the holders of these shards are alive.
How does that work?
Well, Odium has done what may be a unique thing to Odium, and he has splintered quite a few of them. And so what that means is the actual holder of the shard, the vessel, is dead. And the power can't be destroyed. Investiture, it's like matter. You can't destroy it.
Right. But
the shard is splintered, meaning that the power exists, but it's not in a piece where you could pick it up. It'd be like if you took a mug and threw it against the wall and it explodes. Right. It's no longer a mug. You can't pick it up and use it as a mug. All the pieces are there, except you're dealing with a near infinite power source.
Right.
So like, there's a planet, the Elantris planet, both of the shards, Devotion and Dominion, they both settled on that world, and Odium came there and killed them both. And so they were splintered, and their power there has not necessarily combined, but it has, all kinds of fucking bad shit has happened as a result of those like dead gods being murdered on that world. And then we know of cultivation, honor. Trying to see if I'm missing any. Um, ambition, and those are the only ones I can name. Anything further than that is more than I'm willing to talk about here. But
Fair.
very fucking interesting things happen with those, and like the deeper you go in, the more evident they are. Like when you read Mistborn, at least the first one, they're really not even going to get into that. It's a lot like this, where that story is what you really want to focus on, and then as you get further into it, it very quickly becomes like, oh, okay, this is why all of these things are happening. So,
gotcha. So I guess a question for you, since this is still a little bit part of that spoiler section there. Would you say that throughout the entire Cosmere, I know that there's different really cool and intricate individual storylines that maybe some of those bleed over. Would you say that there's like one overarching theme, threat, or storyline that is being woven or told? And if not, do you have a theory on what that could be? Or would that be too spoilery?
well, some people believe that ultimately they're going to put Adonalsium back together.
Oh.
And I don't think that would be...
That's capital G, God, for those of you keeping up.
Yeah, I don't think that... So first of all, like, that entity is dead, right? Like, the power is alive.
Yeah.
But essentially, like, that creature, that god, is dead. So I think that, like, if you had an individual that could hold them all, you could have someone who could take all the shards back up. But in order to fucking do that, you have to essentially know how to kill 16 gods, unless one of the existing people does it, right? And then, like, there's also, like, how do you, and this is into the weeds, but it's how do you continue to do that, right? Because if you pick up the shard of preservation, it will immediately start to pull on you. Oh, you can't harm that. You have to preserve.
Right.
You know, if you pick up honor, you're immediately gonna be pulled into, oh God, like I don't, you know, and that's Odium's goal, right? That's why he splinters shards. He kills the vessel and breaks the power apart so that someone else can't pick it up and challenge him. But he doesn't want to pick the shard up because the race who picked up Odium chose that shard on purpose. We are, according to Hoyd, that dude was a dickbag well before he ever picked that shard up. And so he does not want the influence of another power to pull his intent in that direction. He wants to be the sole god of the Cosmere. But he doesn't want to start incorporating these shards back into himself because he doesn't want to be pulled by their intent.
Right.
I would, you know, I wouldn't think autonomy would either, right? Because that kind of goes against the intent wholly.
Right.
The two of them probably working together, I think that's a possibility. Currently, Odium is trapped on Rashar and cannot escape. So, which is great unless you live there. But yeah, I mean, is there an overarching plot? I think that the drama with the shards is probably it.
Yeah.
Hoyd factors into that. His story is very interesting. Eventually, we are going to find out all the answers to these kind of questions because eventually Brandon is going to write Dragonsteel, which is going to be probably end up being a trilogy that is based on the original world where all of them are from.
Oh.
Yulin, and it's going to be the story of them killing God and how all that played out. So we'll find out why, and we'll find out how. And there are things in the Cosmere that didn't come from Adonalsium. There's a thing called Aethers, and they either predate Adonalsium being shattered or weren't created by him at all. And they're nuts too. So,
Good grief.
Yeah, there's a lot. As far as overarching plot for like the whole thing, I mean, Hoyt obviously would be like the kind of the main character, and some of these stories he's in a lot, and some of these stories he's only in like this one. He's just kind of a cameo, kind of Easter egg character, but he is a big picture guy. As a matter of fact, he says to one of the characters he's on Rashar, and he says, I'm helping you, but don't misunderstand. In order to fulfill my goals, if this planet has to burn, I wouldn't think twice at all about making that sacrifice, because he's 100% a big picture guy. To him, Odium is the biggest threat to the Cosmere, and he has a personal distaste for race, and it's mutual. And to him, Odium is the biggest threat in the Cosmere, and he will do anything, and I mean anything, to not only prevent Odium's escape, but to stop him from doing what he's going to do. And his armies are fucking twisted, bro. Yeah, he has some shit. But I do think that there will be kind of more to that. Mistborn and Stormlight are definitely like the main pillars. These are the main places where everything's happening.
Right.
Odium hasn't showed up on Scadrial because he can't, but fucking Autonomy has. And I think that's where we're going to see going forward, is I think Autonomy is coming after Scadrial. And I think that Odium for now is going to still be stuck on Rashar. We will see after Stormlight 5 if that is still the case. But I think if Odium gets loose, we're going to have some really big fucking problems. But yeah, I mean, there is a lot. And the interconnected nature of it, by the time you get to the Lost Metal, which is the most recent Mistborn book, we're full tilt now. The gloves are off. It's full on like Avengers crossover shit.
Right. Okay.
Shit.
Well, that sounds dope as hell then.
Yeah, I mean, you have full tilt. Like, this character from this other book is here, and they're fucking shit up, and then this character runs a fucking secret organization on another planet, and I mean, it's just, there's a whole lot. Like, a lot of it, the earlier books are kind of like White Sand, where people weren't really thinking in shared universes yet.
Yeah.
And he was very much like, okay, I want you to be able to pick this book up and not have to have read all this shit. Lost Metal is not that. Like, Lost Metal is pure, just, it is the biggest example thus far of him just being like, fuck it. If you haven't read everything, then you're not going to get this,
I mean, and there comes a point where you have to do that, though,
Yeah, you can't take somebody who's never seen anything in the MCU, and be like, here, watch Infinity War.
Yeah,
they're gonna be tripping balls. Right. They're gonna be like, what the fuck is happening? So,
I do have one more question on my end.
Okay,
we talked about this a little bit off mic before we started recording. We talked about if Sanderson, does he have a team that helps him out, because this all sounds like a lot. I mean, and even logistically speaking, keeping up with all of this seems like such a improbability for one person. So is there a team of people who are helping? And like, if so, to what degree are they helping pitch ideas, fill in the blanks? Are they looking at potential plot holes that could be?
So Brandon is still, the major guiding creative force for the Cosmere. But unfortunately, Brandon also likes to fucking go down these rabbit holes and write other shit, right? Mm-hmm. Like, for example, we had Skyward, and that's non-Cosmere. But he wanted to write a book that was like this. It's Aragon, right? It's a story of this girl. She finds a sentient spaceship. And it's a fucking great book. And then next thing you know, there's like 4 novellas and there's 4 novels and it's its own thing, you know. Or for example, the second era of Mistborn was never supposed to be a thing. So in Mistborn, the technology is very much medieval, right? Well, not medieval. It's like medieval going into industrial.
Okay.
You know, they have certain things.
Yeah.
Like they have like canned food, you know.
Gotcha.
But other things are like they don't have guns. Like they have bows and shit.
Okay.
So the second era of Mistborn was supposed to jump all the way to like 1980s like tech.
Shit.
It's supposed to be a very large jump. And that's a fucking really cool thing about Mistborn is that's so unique is there's really not another story where we actually see a world change like that.
Yeah.
It's usually, this is the setting, whereas with Mistborn, we get to see how this world evolved over time. Well, sometime after he wrote the first trilogy, he was at the airport and his flight got delayed. And so he sat down and wrote a steampunk western Mistborn book. And now there are 4 novels in Era 2 because his flight got delayed. Yeah. And originally he just wrote Alloy of Law, which is what the first one is called, and it's fucking steampunk cowboy wizards. What's there not to like?
Right.
And then he was like, well, I'll just do this one book and then we'll jump into era what was going to be Era 2. Mm-hmm. And then people really love the characters. And he's like, I really like the characters too. And then there's 3 more books. So.
God damn.
So, yeah. So, Brandon writes what he's going to write. However, we have Isaac Stewart, who is the head of creative at Dragonsteel and put together this Omni. And we are going to see some stories, I think, that Isaac writes and maybe just runs by Brandon for, like, is this okay for the Cosmere?
Yeah.
Right? And the cool thing about the Cosmere is, you know, there's stuff like Trust of the Emerald Sea. You have Lumar, which is a super fucking unique planet, and it has a whole bunch of cool tie-ins. But it's all fun. Its own little world, and as far as we know, there's not even a shard there. So you can go off and write this really whimsical kind of story there, and it's fine, you know. And I think Isaac maybe will do things like that. Maybe he'll write a White Sand too. I would love that. It just depends. And then also he recently got Dan Wells to come on board, and so he's a Dragonsteel employee now. He's also an author, and he mostly writes like horror.
Oh,
and so. That's not really Brandon's strong suit, but there are some aspects of the Cosmere that are going to kind of lean in that direction. So Dan is going to be writing books in the Cosmere as well. So this has become a big, huge thing. They do have like an internal wiki that they use to keep up with everything.
Good. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it has become this huge deal. And, you know, Brandon putting out 4 or 5 books a year.
Right.
Still can't necessarily keep up with it. He may only have one release next year, and that would be Stormlight, because he literally asked the bindery what the maximum number of pages they could put in a hardcover was.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a feeling that Stormlight 5, which, as we know, is going to be called The Knights of Wind and Truth, is it's probably going to be 1,300, 1,400 pages. I have no doubt, yeah.
God damn. Man,
yeah, he's ridiculous.
Yeah. So, I think I know the answer to this, but like with the, you know, with the other people helping, kind of filling the blanks or helping write more in the Cosmere, do you have an issue with that, with Sanderson not doing everything, or are you fine with the idea of other talented people who maybe have a different flair coming in?
This book gives me a lot of respect for Isaac.
Yeah.
And listening to like interviews with him. And Isaac's been around from day one, right? Like, so.
Oh, that's good.
You know, he's a fucking Cosmere scholar. Like,
yeah.
You know. But then Dan, I haven't read any of his work. They actually, so he and Brandon wrote a graphic novel together called Dark One. It's not in the Cosmere, it's its own thing.
Yeah.
But people have been kind of raving about it. I haven't read it yet. Maybe that'd be a thing we can.
You said it's Dark One?
It's called Dark One. Yeah. And maybe that's a thing we could we could do.
Yeah.
So I would want to check out his work. Brandon definitely wouldn't have brought him in if he didn't think he was going to be a good addition. I do think Brandon will continue to write all of the main shit. Mm-hmm. I don't think we're going to see a Mistborn by anybody on the cover other than Brandon Sanderson.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to see a Stormlight by anyone other than Brandon Sanderson. But if Dan Wells writing a book means that I can get Mistborn Era 3 before I'm 50, then I'll be very happy about that. Because Brandon has said he wants to finish it all. I think like 63 is his age.
Oh, okay.
He wants to have it done.
It's a very specific age.
It's random, yeah. But I definitely hope he gets it all done because, we are about to go into Mistborn Era 3, which is going to be like an 80s technology type deal. And then, we know that the end of the Cosmere is going to be Mistborn again. It's going to be the fourth era, which is going to be like a space age, like a futuristic deal. And it's going to be so awesome we get there to have started off in this world in like a pre-industrial revolution,
right?
And having been with it throughout all of these eras. I don't know that there's a story like that. So, and then I don't know what the fuck's going to happen on Rashar. Like, I have no fucking idea what the back half of the Stormlight Archive is going to be about. So I don't know, man. I like that he has a team. I'm very glad that Dragonsteel is expanding. Tor, who has published most of the Cosmere, they have to be getting nervous because he's got his own publishing company now. They just bought like a warehouse like 10 times the size of the one they have. And you have to think that at some point he's going to break away from Tor and just self-publish everything.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you've seen the copy of Tress of the Emerald Sea that I have.
Mm-hmm.
That book is beautiful.
That is a gorgeous book.
And they just came out with the Frugal Wizard's Guide to Medieval London. It's a non-Cosmere.
Okay, I was like, wait a
minute. And I have no interest in reading it anytime soon, but I will eventually get to it. And it also is gorgeous. As a matter of fact, the bottom of each page has like some little artwork on it, and it's different, and it's very similar. Like, I think all the Dragonsteel editions to these books are looking like that, and it comes to the point where it's like we're gonna want that for all of the books.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the contracts with Tor are. I don't know how long he has to stay with them, but they have to know that he eventually wants to do his own thing. And one of the things that he's very adamant about is, like, if you buy the physical book, you should get the audio and the ebook with it.
Damn.
And which is something like Wizard of the Coast is starting to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that's always driven Brandon fucking nuts with these publishers, is like, at least you should get the ebook with it.
Yeah.
If you buy the physical book. And so I think that Dragonsteel is going to start trying to kind of change the way that publishing is. And Brandon's so big that he can do that. I mean, he recently just said, fuck Audible. And that's Amazon.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he can tell Amazon to fuck off. And, he's that big. So I don't know, man. I think it remains to be seen. I think he's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. I know Hollywood has come calling.
Oh, I bet.
But the one thing that he's stuck by is the Hollywood studios don't know how to react to him, because they show up with a briefcase full of cash, and they're like, "Hey, we wanted the rights to this. Here's $10 million," and he's like, "I want full creative control.
Yeah,
keep your money," and they have no idea how to react to that.
Yeah,
he has written a Mistborn screenplay.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, so I mean, literally, he's got it sitting around.
Yeah,
all that has to happen is some studio has to make it.
God damn.
He will not allow a live action adaptation to occur without him having at least considerable creative control.
I mean, I think that's an incredibly honorable power play.
Right. I mean,
I dig that.
Yeah, I mean, because can you imagine if, like, Infinity War had sucked and you're Jim Starlin. You know what I mean?
Right.
He didn't have any creative control over that. He just got lucky as fuck.
Yeah.
That the people that did respect the work.
Right.
If Robert Jordan could watch Wheel of Time, he would probably crumble and die. He's probably rolling over in his grave.
Oh shit.
I mean, just imagine if Tolkien watched Rings of Power.
Oh.
Yeah,
that'd probably break him.
Yeah, I mean, 5 minutes in, he'd be like, "These graphics are mind blowing, but what the fuck?"
Yeah. You probably look at it and just think it's parody. Like, are they satiring my work?
Yeah. He probably would honestly hate the Peter Jackson movies.
Oh wow. Man, Tolkien's the first Alan Moore.
Right, yeah. Yeah. He didn't live he wasn't around long enough to get Alan Moore.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's certain things he would like. I think he would really like Treebeard.
Okay. Well, okay.
He'd be like, "Why didn't you guys get C.S. Lewis to voice this character?" And they'd be like, "Well, we got some news for you."
You might want to sit down for this.
You might want to sit down, yeah. But yeah, I think that that's really cool. I personally don't want to see Stormlight live action adapted.
Really? Ever? Wow.
Not unless a bunch of people are going to get real cool with a bunch of shit really fast. Because the production budget alone, I mean, just the amount of CG that you would have, because number one, you'd have to invent, I think, an even more advanced volume than they use on Mandalorian. Because, as I said earlier, there's nowhere on Earth you can go and film Rashar, right?
Oh, okay.
It's not Earth-like, really. So, I mean, there's certain scenes that you could do, but for the most part, you're going to have to make that shit in a volume.
Yeah.
So that's expensive. And then one of the forms of investiture on that world is called Spren, and I can't, we were 3 hours into this. I can't go into what they are, but just imagine that they're kind of like little magical, like Pokemon, right? And they are drawn to like emotions, right? So there's like victory sprint. So you win a battle and you start to feel this emotion, and they will be drawn to you.
Huh.
And so they're everywhere, like all the time. And so the CG to make that, there's gonna be CG on. It's gonna be a fucking Space Jam amount all the time. You know what I mean? And so yeah, I mean, just to make it, and not to mention, if you made, even if, and Brandon has talked about this, Brandon pitched what he would do if like Netflix wanted to do 10 hours for the first book.
Yeah.
And I don't like it.
I think I remember hearing you say that, and that caught me by surprise.
Yeah. And I was like, no, we need 25 hours for the first book. And that really is what it is. And I just don't see a live action adaptation of that. I don't see the money being invested in it. And then I don't know if it would play in live action, because the lore is the story. And I don't know, man. I mean, Lord of the Rings is so fucking good, you know?
Yeah.
And, like, the casting would just have to be... It's going to be like, I'm going to need like $1 billion for the first one. And nobody's going to come off of that shit, you know? Well, they spent $600 million on the first season of the fucking Rings of Power.
All right, we don't need to talk about that.
Yeah. And, like, $4 of that was the writing staff.
That much, huh?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's like the cab fare to get them there.
Oh, okay, that's true. Yeah.
So,
goddamn.
But yeah, I'm excited to see where things go. I do think that Mistborn is uniquely suited to be a Hollywood production. They also could fuck it up. I think a lot of it revolves around who they would cast as Vin, because the reason I tell people to start there is because Vin is very easy to fall in love with as a protagonist. She's very likable. she's a character that you want to root for.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's one of the reasons why I like the Flash isn't making money, is because like Ezra Miller's just not that person right now.
Oh yeah.
You know, and yeah, I mean that's what it all comes down to for me is like, can you capture the essence of these characters? Which it's funny because we talk about that on the show a lot.
Right.
It's the same thing with if you're trying to adapt any of these things on these shelves around me.
Yeah.
If you would have told me that Netflix was going to do a decent job with Sandman, I would have been like, I don't ever want to see that shit adapted either.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, hell, I haven't read a whole lot of it, but like even like The Witcher, you know, like can you? But I mean, season 1 I thought was, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't watched season 3, but
No, I haven't watched season 3 either.
I haven't heard anything but bad about it.
Oh, really?
I've only heard negative.
It just came out, didn't it? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well.
Yeah, and I don't know, man. It's the same thing, man. It doesn't matter if you're adapting a comic book or not.
Mm-hmm.
You follow the homie commandments or you don't.
Yeah, you do, you don't, you know, and you know, I mean, hell, it's not like we made the commandments and then so everything fall into place. It was like, okay, this is what's happening. These commandments are to prevent that from happening again.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah, and I mean, fucking Zack Snyder proved
Yeah.
he understood it finally.
Yeah.
But I mean,
He did Watchmen first, you know.
but I know that, like, you know, picking this up and when you read it, how many times were you reading this book and you know, did you sit there in your head and go, Hollywood would totally fuck this?
Oh, yeah. Hollywood would shit all over this.
You can hear John Peters looking at the whole like Tyshan angle and being like, nobody's gonna get this. Take this out.
Yeah, take it. I tell you what. Yeah, if this was ever adapted, how many Tyson were there? Were there a total of 7?
There, if you include the Lord Mastral, so there's 1, 2, 3. There's actually 9 if you
9,
include the
okay.
Lord Mastral and the Lord Beggar.
Yeah,
Even though he doesn't get a vote.
it's true. Even though he doesn't get a vote. Yeah, like there would probably be like 3 of them. You know, and a lot of the roles would be condensed. You know, you would get Vay, you would get Auric's dad, and you get like and you get fucking goddamn drunkard.
Yeah, and they would be caricatures.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, no characters detected.
Yeah.
All caricatures.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it'd be very stripped down, and they would lose what makes stories like this so great. You know, that's the other thing too. Like, you could just hear them being like, "Well, nobody's gonna watch this story about this dude going around all these bureaucrats trying to convince them to vote for him." Well, see, the problem is that Hollywood, or the people in it, they're so full of themselves that they unknowingly always make these self-fulfilling prophecies. Nobody wants to see whatever movie, and then they butcher the material, make the movie,
And no one
wants to see it. And they're like, well, see? No one wanted to see this.
see the Flash.
Yeah. And so the difference is, surely, the difference is that with the Flash, they had to have been like, well, people will want to see a Flash movie.
I feel like any time now I'm gonna go and on the internet and read a headline and it's gonna be like, somehow Morbius surpassed the Flash at the box office this weekend. Like, what the fuck? They were still playing that?
No.
Yeah. It's like no.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Like, that happened to me like the whole time I was going through this. You just could tell like what they would have taken out, what they would simplify. I think there'd be all these really unnecessary scenes of Kenton using the sand and like
Oh yeah.
doing all these like fancy fucking unnecessary fight scenes.
I think they would make it too Avatar Last Airbender, and instead of making it its own thing.
Also, every time those assassins attacked, you would have Chrysala with no powers taking out an equal amount of them as Kenton.
Yeah.
And then at least once in the movie, you would have Kenton using the Sand Mastery, and like one of the assassins like comes up behind him, and then Chrysala hits the guy with a book or something.
Yeah. Of course, there's a giant book of Hollywood tropes that they have to put in at least 10,
Yeah.
Yeah, they definitely do that.
Awful sauce. And they probably would find a way to ruin Ace also.
Yeah. And so that's the thing, right? Like, it depends if they were to make it into a movie or a TV show. If it's a TV show, she actually makes it in there.
Yeah.
If it's a movie, maybe even not.
They maybe just doesn't even make it. Or they cast Brie Larson.
So it doesn't even make it.
And she's just bitchy.
Like,
that's the character.
Yeah. Brie's like, I don't know what my character is, though. Like, just
be yourself.
Yeah.
Just do you. Yeah. They would make her like snotty and bitchy and lose all other context.
Right. Yeah. So like the reasoning and the understanding of the character would all be lost. Like the conflict that you feel when you read Ace in this book in comparison with the Kenton, that would be completely lost in translation.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
And I think they would try to open with the big ass fight with the Sandmasters and the Assassins. Like
that would be a huge mistake.
100% think they open the story that way. And they probably skimp on the fight and make a lot of it CG.
Oh yeah. 100%. I mean, in their defense, like, what are you gonna do? You got these giant ass sand ribbons and people flying, and
this is where I just hold up a copy of fucking The Lord of the Rings Extended. Like, here we go. These motherfuckers assembled like 500 horses to run across the field.
Yeah. But you can't assemble 5,000 grains of sand to be like, all right, sand.
Yeah, there's nowhere on planet Earth where there's 5,000 grains of sand.
That you can make a fucking whip or a sand ribbon?
Oh.
That part.
Well, they have to CG the sand.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, they would CG the people.
Oh, fuck. No.
Yeah. They would CG the people in the fight. There'd be like 4 real people.
Right.
And then everybody else would be some fucking AI generated random, the crowd from SmackDown versus Raw.
Fred Durst from the entrance he had.
Yes. Oh my God.
We've been going for 3 hours now.
Yeah, we really have. I knew I was going to come on here and nerd the fuck out, but I didn't know the rabbit hole was going to go this deep, but here we are.
Oh, well, the rabbit hole is never ending, my friend. It is continuously going on. But I think we should go ahead and wrap up here.
Yeah, same. It's like 1 a.m. You got work tomorrow?
Yeah.
Oh, fuck, yeah. Yeah, this man is dedicated as shit.
Oh, 100%. I was like, I mean, hell, I kept asking questions like, okay, so what about this?
Yeah, about the 2.5 hour mark, I was like, all right, yeah, man, I probably said enough here. And then you're like, so let me ask you about 6 things. I was like, all right, man, well, I don't have to go to work until like Wednesday, so we can sit here as long as you want, bro. You're the one that's gonna suffer, not me.
All I have to do is drive a big ass truck. It's all good.
But this was totally worth the wait.
100%.
I've loved this, and I'm glad this delivered because like I read it as you were reading it.
Yeah.
So it 100% could have been like the worst Sanderson work.
That's by far the worst case scenario.
It could have been dog shit.
Yeah.
And you would have been like, nah.
Like,
and I was like,
is this your king?
Yeah. Is this your king? Like, yeah. But I mean, that's the thing. Like everybody I've introduced to his storytelling, like, has been like, nah, this is the shit.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help that Hollywood keeps doing all the shit we were just talking about.
Yeah.
And he consistently does not do that shit. And every time he subverts my expectations, well, I'm not going to say every time. I'm going to say like 97% of the time, when he subverts my expectations, I like it. Mm-hmm. And that's a weird fucking thing too, because with Hollywood, it's like the opposite percentage. If it's not Christopher Nolan, odds are I don't want to be subverted.
Yeah.
Just give me the trope.
Yeah. I don't know who else in Hollywood has done it. Like, I'm sure there are, but like off top right now, it's a very short list of filmmakers who have subverted expectations successfully.
That may be one of the reasons why I fucking scored Indy the way I did, is because it's literally just a tropey fucking Indiana Jones adventure. And that's literally what I fucking wanted. And there's no point. There's a couple of points in that movie where I'm like, okay. But it never made me angry. It never pissed me off. It never made me be like, I wish they had never made this fucking thing. It just, it was a fucking tropey adventure movie.
Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah, and, and I'll fucking take that over Crystal Skull any day.
I blame Hollywood then for burying the bar,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's on them.
It is.
Yeah. Well, in conclusion, fuck you, Hollywood. Straighten up, and maybe you won't keep losing money. You got any closing thoughts about White Sand, the Cosmere?
I think Hollywood should pay their fucking writers, even though they're not 100%. Doing a great job.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why they're not doing a great job. Maybe that's why they're turning in bullshit. And if they think that they're going to get Sanderson to come help them, this motherfucker is 100% in solidarity with the writers, of course, because it's what he does for a living.
Yeah.
No, man, this has been a blast. I am glad that I got you on the sauce.
You did, and you successfully did, son of a bitch.
Yeah, you were kind of the last frontier.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to start working on billing now.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, here we go. And now you get to take the plunge. But, this has been amazing, dude.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for being here, Caleb, and for guiding me throughout the Cosmere and for helping me to dip my toe in. I was just going to dip my toe in, and now you tried to push me in all the way.
Well, just the tip doesn't count.
I have had a blast here. Homies, I hope all of you have enjoyed this as well. Get you guys a healthy dose of the Cosmere. And yeah, guys, definitely check out White Sand. Even if you're like me and are not familiar with the Cosmere at all, this is a very enjoyable, very highly recommended starting point. If you guys are like me and you occasionally want to break away from the norms of Marvel or DC and get something that's different, new, and a little refreshing, you want to check this out. So, 100% recommend. But with that being said, I'm tired.
Same. And I'm glad I got this energy drink because I was nodding at like 8 o'clock. I was like, I need to pick me up.
So this energy drink right here, a customer gave this to me earlier today. This thing is still half full. I took like 2 sips and I was like, what in the hell is in this? It is insane. But that's gonna be all from now. We will see you guys again soon. But until then, my name is Superhero Homie Q.
And I'm Superhero Homie Caleb.